Welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting, 15th of December 2020, here at the Mortlake Chambers. First of all, I'd like to start off with an acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and the elders from other communities who may be here today. You may stand for the prayer. Almighty God, we humbly beseech your blessing on the Council, direct and prosper its deliberations for the welfare of the people of the Moyne Shire. Amen. Recording of Council meetings. Please note that today's meeting is being video recorded. This recording will be uploaded to Council's website and will be accessible by the general public. By participating in and addressing these present at the meeting, you consent to any information you disclose, including any personal information or sensitive information, being recorded and uploaded to the website. Do we have any apologies, Mr. Miller? No. No apologies. Declarations of interest, declarations of conflict of interest for any items on today's agenda. Mr. Miller.
Item 9, Mayor.
Item 9. Yep. Mr. Davis.
Item 5, Mayor.
Item 5.
Mr. Greenberg.
Mr. Greenberg.
Item 4, Mayor.
Item 4, thank you. Thank you, they are recorded. Moving to the confirmation of minutes from the previous Ordinary Council meeting on the 24th of November 2020. Do we have any questions or comments on those minutes? We'll seek a mover, please. Councillor Lockett's move, seconded Councillor Purcell. Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. They are a fair and accurate summary of the events on the 24th of November. Thank you.
Councillor Purcell.
No, not needed.
All councillors, could we please vote on the confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting? All those in favour? Carried 7-0. Moving to the public participation. So, public participants have all obviously filled out a form to be involved in today's meeting. They understand that the guidelines that are there, or the rules that are there regarding 5 minutes and question not being answered can be taken on notice, etc. So we have 6 participants today. So we'll start off with Mr. Neil Blaine, please, if you'd like to make your way up to the spare seat on the corner there. Welcome, Mr. Blaine.
Thank you.
You are okay to go. Thanks.
Great. Okay, I'm addressing the Council today in support of the motion from Councillor Dukas requesting Moyne Shire engage an independent acoustician to undertake background noise monitoring at Hawkesdale. This independent testing is important because Moyne Shire Council will have no access to any noise data for the Hawkesdale Wind Farm if it votes this motion down and if councillors choose to do nothing today. And I ask the question, what if the Hawkesdale Wind Farm noise modelling is wrong? Moyne Shire will not be given any access to any noise data in the future by the proponent. It will only have access to summary reports of compliance testing when the wind farm is operational. Moyne Shire is the responsible authority for administration and enforcement of the Hawkesdale Wind Farm planning permit and will have no way to investigate noise complaints, and by the way, neither will any EPA peer-reviewed peer organisations for that matter, because they will not have access to confidential noise data held by the wind farm. In July 2019, Moyne Shire passed a motion to divert community funds paid by wind farm proponents to the Hawkesdale residents. The motion referred to $400,000 per year that was to be donated to local communities in the Shire from 6 planned wind farms at that time, and Hawkesdale was one of these. The $1,000 per turbine per year to be paid to the Hawkesdale community equates to $650,000 over the life of the project and is essentially being siphoned off by the councillors to benefit other parts of Moyne Shire. This money is in addition to rates. Why then should Moyne Shire take the wind farm community cash out of the Hawkesdale township and leave residents high and dry? How can it also claim it doesn't have the money to undertake the independent noise testing being requested today, when the cost of that could be as little as $27,000? In my opinion, Moyne Shire has not treated Hawkesdale residents with the respect it deserves for a long time on this issue. The No More Wind Farms in Moyne Shire motion was put forward as one way to help Hawkesdale. It was essentially good politics, and that's it. It was meaningless in relation to Hawkesdale Wind Farm. When the extension to the Hawkesdale Wind Farm permit was recently announced publicly, the Warrnambool Standard reported, Moyne Shire currently has a formal position against the state government granting any further permits for wind farms in the Shire. But Council Chief Executive Officer Bill Millard said the planning permit extensions did not undermine that position. The two wind farms have long had permits, therefore they are not directly impacted by the council resolution. Why didn't Moyne Shire councillors bother telling Hawkesdale residents that? Also, why did Moyne Shire councillors write a letter to the Planning Minister in July 2020 asking for a 5-kilometre setback for the Hawkesdale wind farm from the town, knowing that was a pointless exercise? If anything, Moyne Shire has actively undermined the rights of Hawkesdale residents. It has quietly campaigned in the background to remove the ability of Hawkesdale residents to make future nuisance complaints under the Public Health and Wellbeing Act. The importance of this avenue for making complaints is that it covers a greater range of nuisances caused by wind farms, such as infrasound, vibration, etc., that are not covered by the New Zealand standard. Moyne Shire has clearly been made aware of the concerns of the Hawkesdale community from a wind farm 1.5 kilometres away, if that, from the town. Time has been wasted by Moyne Shire in writing letters and passing motions that, by its own admission, would never help Hawkesdale. With construction supposedly beginning at the end of this summer, the window to undertake background noise testing before construction begins is rapidly closing. I urge Moyne Shire councillors to support this motion.
Thanks, Mr. Blaine, for your address. Do we have any questions? Councillor.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. I can appreciate the concern from Hawkesdale. One of my questions to you is about the independence of the acousticians which have been recommended in Councillor Dukas's motion. And just a question to you, I'll get there, is would you support the Moyne Shire Council to explore the possibility of sourcing an independent acoustician? Because the three that have been suggested aren't registered with the EPA, and that's one of the concerns I have. Just wondering what your thoughts are about that.
I think independence of the noise monitoring work is critical.
Yeah.
They need to be done by people that aren't connected to the wind farm industry or aren't
Yep.
the preferred providers.
Yep.
So I think the three that providers that are nominated in the motion are the three that need to do the work.
Okay.
Further questions for Mr. Blaine? Councillor Dukas?
G'day Neil, and thanks for coming in. You said that we don't get access to the reports, pre-construction reports or background noise reports. Do you think that's a fair way of going about things?
Not if you're a neighbour trying to fight a wind farm. If you're a wind farm proponent, that makes perfect sense, because why would you release data that supports your project, or data that actually might undermine the project if it gets scrutiny by an independent acoustician? The problem we have is that the noise industry is such a closed shop in relation to those that interact with wind farm companies that I think there are always commercial interests at stake when you go to the pool that regularly do this work for wind farms.
Councillor Purcell?
Thank you, Mr. Blaine. I appreciate you attending today and your information. You raised a lot of issues about the council taking money and not supporting that. Your basic concern, though, is the wind monitoring. It's not the other issues you raised, or is that just sort of one of the many issues that you wanted to put into the pot?
The key issue is what I raised at the end, is that the clock is ticking before construction starts to get noise data that reflects the Hawkesdale area prior to construction. And I find that it's been quite astonishing, in my opinion, that issues have been brought before the council in the past, and they're not actually constructive issues that will help the community. The only way to really help the community is to get this independent noise testing, have control of the data, own the data, and then the community can be represented by Moyne Shire. We're not relying on the wind farm company or the acoustician that's involved in the project and therefore has a conflict of interest. You need independent noise data that will stand alone, that is looked independently and will support the residents.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Mr Blaine, for your presentation. Just a bit concerned earlier on in your presentation, you mentioned money that had been siphoned away from the Hawkesdale community by the Moyne Shire. Could you just expand on that, please, a little bit?
Well, there was a motion, I said in July of 2019, that Moyne Shire passed a motion. It was Colin Ryan's motion, and what the intent of the motion was, it was to be more strategic with the community funds that were intended for local communities like Hawkesdale. Now, the upshot of that motion is that Moyne Shire was going to go away and talk to the wind farm proponents and actually investigate how that money could be used more strategically, which in effect is taking it out of those communities, those small local communities that could never spend that money, and actually direct it to other projects within the Shire.
Sorry, just a
follow up there.
clarification, the funds you're talking about, is that from the existing Macarthur wind farm?
I don't know. It was in relation to 6 wind farms, 2 of which, there was Ryan's Corner and Hawkesdale were 2 that were mentioned. I don't know whether Macarthur was involved in that project. It was actually wind farm projects that were planned, not wind farm projects that had been built. It was identifying wind farm projects in a very specific part of their development process, which Moyne Shire could actually intercept some of those funds and redirect them to other projects within Moyne Shire and be more strategic, in Moyne Shire's words, about how that money was used. And I remember one councillor saying in that meeting, how many ride-on mowers can Hawkesdale community buy every year with the amount of money that's going to be going in?
Any further questions for Mr Blaine? Thanks very much for your address. Thank you. Mr John Boss, please.
Hello everybody.
Thanks, Mr Boss. You're welcome to begin.
Yeah, some of you know me, some don't. I know a couple of councillors. There's the main culprit that I know the most because he comes along to every meeting we have for. But anyhow, look, my name is John Boss. I've been a long-term resident of Hawkesdale. My wife runs the only shop in Hawkesdale. Over the past few years, I've become increasingly concerned as to the impact of the project of this project, the wind farm project, on the social and economic well-being of all the residents of the township and also the nearby people who are around. I've asked many questions of state government in this regard, with no response over the last 14 months, not one iota of information as to how this is going to affect us. The Hawkesdale wind farm project is unique. It's the only one closest to any township in the entire Shire. It borders the settlement boundary, and even the state government has prevented any future housing development where it borders the southeast corner of the town, even though this area is outside the current distance requirements. So they've pulled that away. For what reason? I don't know. As you're no doubt aware, Marshall Day are the acoustics experts which have undertaken background noise testing on behalf of the wind farm proponent, GPG. In the usual course of events, being the experts, I would have expected them to produce accurate data that would satisfy all residents that they would not be affected by this project. I'm not an expert and I can't disseminate the information they've gathered. I've heard that Marshall Day reports that some other wind farm locations, either being built or having been built, are now under scrutiny. I also believe some court action is taking place as a result of at least one of their reports. This is all hearsay, it's only what I've heard. Under normal circumstances, I would have said they're the professionals, they know what they're doing. But it's put that seed of doubt. The motion being put forward to have an independent acoustic expert to check the accuracy of Marshall Day report is not a whimsical request. If indeed the report is inaccurate, the effects on the township only 1 kilometre from the nearest tower could or would affect the future of the township. Given the proposal to limit or prevent future noise complaints, that's another thing that I've just heard, it is upon you, as the representatives of the community, to ensure that the future of the township is not adversely affected by the wind farm, and certainly not in regards to noise. I understand that the motion requests the council to foot the bill, and in doing so, it may cause a precedent. Not so. As I said earlier, Hawkesdale is unique due to its close proximity to the development, even more so than Mortlake South. And I think if you just look out there, you can see how far away they are. In any case, the relatively small amount expended by the council will do two things. One, it will prevent or at least lessen future noise complaints to Shire, because we've had the independence put into it. As we would know, the proponents' acoustics team are compliant, or are forced to become compliant prior to the construction of the project. So we'll either know, yes, it's going to be compliant, the seed of doubt is still there, but if someone pulls that seed of doubt out, then I think a lot of this will just go away. And number two, potentially lessen the Shire's future costs that they would have been seen to carry out, that they would have not been seen to carry out their duty of care to the community. So if you put this forward, you'll in some way be providing a duty of care to the people of Hawkesdale by saying we have done as best we can do for all you people in Hawkesdale and surrounds to ensure that the noise testing is as good as we can get it. At the moment, you can't do that. And because I believe there's a tainted reputation of Marshall Day, and there's a potentially flawed noise assessment report sitting out there, potentially. The Shire is in the process of accumulating, and this is the same as Mr. Blaine had said, it's in the process of accumulating many tens or more than likely hundreds of thousands of dollars per year in revenue that they would not normally receive. The small amount we, as a community in the Shire, potentially most affected by the wind farm developments, are not asking for much for the Shire's support to at least ensure the effects are not too damaging. And I beseech every one of you to support this for a community that is under threat. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Boss. Do we have any questions, please? Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. I share your concerns. We've, have been discussing this for many years, and I think everyone at the table agrees that the wind farm is proposed to be too close to the town. Yes. Absolutely. One of my concerns about the motion is about the independence with the three names that are being put forward. You probably heard me say this before, but they're not registered with the EPA. One of the things we were discussing earlier is asking for a report to council to find independent acousticians and come back. Is that something that you would support?
I would want someone that is not being paid by, well, they're going to be paid by the council, I suppose. Yeah. But someone that is totally independent of the wind farm people themselves. Yeah. It's a bit like getting your car tested or whatever. The guy says it's a wonderful car. This is a beautiful thing. You take it to an independent tester, and he says, "Oh, but the brakes are only 20%, the tyres are out," and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Someone who can look at it not from GPG's point of view or from Marshall Day's point of view, but a totally independent point of view.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Boss? Councillor Dukas?
Yeah. As you heard Neil say, we've got no access to the pre-construction data. Now that the wind farm's been taken out of the Health and Wellbeing Act, without any detail, do you think the council still has a responsibility to the community?
Yes, they have a duty of care. Not a responsibility, a duty of care. So if you've got someone in the workplace that has suffered an injury and it's because of something that the Shire has done, yeah, they've got a duty of care for that. If a wind farm is going to be built in Hawkesdale and there is the inkling that something is wrong with the assessments that are carried out, it's the duty of care of the Shire to ensure that all the residents of the township are treated in a way that is respectful and to their benefit, no matter what. Yeah, simple as that.
So, without access to the wind farm data from the companies, without doing their own testing, how are we going to implement a duty of care?
The duty of care at this stage, I think, is trying to get as much independence into it as possible. That's the only way, because I don't think the Shire has the ability. I don't have the ability to check out the testing and that sort of thing, but I think if they were able to get someone that is proficient but not allied, that's the way to go. Yeah, not allied to the proponent.
Mr. Boss, just a question from myself. Just to clarify, are you speaking on behalf of Haddock or just
No.
yourself?
No,
Yep.
personally just for myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Any further? Yes, Councillor Gleeson.
Through you, Mayor. John, they had a meeting on the Saturday morning. How many people attended that meeting on the 5th?
Oh, about 50 odd, something like that.
Okay. So, 'cause one of my issues or concerns, I sort of questions, I get it, but, you know, this has been going on for 12 years.
Yes.
So, was there any stage there that with 50 people at the meeting, the community may have said, we need to do this, so we could fund it?
I think getting the people together, you've got to bear in mind that 3 or 4 years ago when we had the meeting at Hawkesdale where the Wind Farm Commissioner turned up, everyone was pushing to get something done. As time goes by, and I'll be upfront with every one of you now, if I walk out of here and I hear that this hasn't happened, I'll be that destitute about it, or that depressed about it, that the support is just not there. The state government hasn't supported us, and the people of Hawkesdale know that. The Moyne Shire in some aspects hasn't. They've written a couple of letters, and as Mr. Blaine said, they're just letters, but the support is not there. There's other issues that are coming up in the new year with regards to the township boundaries, and as I said, I don't know if the Moyne Shire is involved with that at all, but there was one south-east corner of the Shire, of the town boundaries of Hawkesdale, that will never go back. And the only reason for that is that they're the ones that are absolutely closest to the wind farm. Okay? Now, those people who potentially live there, I don't know. I think a lot of them have just gone, what can we do? No one is supporting us. And that's what a lot of people are getting. That's what I'd be getting after this meeting today. The 50 that would have turned up, yes, I've got the names of the majority of them. To get them together, and you know what it's like, to get an avalanche moving, you really need to push and push and push, and that would be the same with getting money.
Yeah. So, John, the point my issue is that 4 councils ago, the permit had expired.
Yes.
And council voted to not renew it.
Yes.
And that got turned over at VCAT in 5 minutes.
Yes.
And so the company built a pad, and so the project is under construction.
That's right.
And so now, 4 councils later, we've got to fix this. So what I want to know is, if you could help me, what has the local community done over the last 12 years to get ready for this?
Well, what can you do? I mean, as I said, I've written to the wind farm, Richard Wynne. That's put straight back to Jane Homewood. Jane Homewood, and these are the letters that go before Haddock. She writes a letter saying that the council has seen that there's no development going to happen down that end of town because it doesn't need to be. And that's not true either, because we're fighting for that. I've been trying to get now for nearly 4 months information as to why they've not done that, and council just won't answer me. I've just had the most recent one with Robin Olsen, and she's willing to see me with regards to town boundaries 4 months after I initially made the inquiry. And the wind farm people, they put me through to a guy named Michael Jutner, who simply says, oh no, everything's going all right. I rang him about a month ago and said, look, you haven't answered me in 13 odd months. What are you going to do? Oh, we're writing a letter. We're going to write you a letter. Yet the last wind farm, they'd proposed to extend their permit. It's been checked over by the state government. Obviously, Michael Jutner has looked at it as well, and they've passed it. So where do you stand? Yet they won't even talk to me.
So, Councillor Gleeson, just the last one. Thanks.
Last one.
Yep.
Last one.
Go for it.
So the community is now, after 12 years, come to the council. So I guess my question is, with 50 people at a meeting last Saturday,
Yep.
would they be prepared to contribute towards an independent study?
I think a lot of people would. It's working out who pays what, who does this and who does whatever.
Yeah, that's okay.
But it's only this meeting now that I found out what it would potentially cost. I didn't know whether it was going to be $2,000 or $50,000. I had no idea.
Thanks, Mr. Boss. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, John, for coming along for your presentation. I'm just wondering, would you be comfortable with wording by an EPA accredited acoustician?
That's something I don't know. I don't know what their affiliations are, but if they're I still want a totally independent person to do it. Who that is, I don't know. That's up to council to decide, and I suppose there's some other learned people around here who can point you in the right direction, but it's certainly not me.
It's just a grey area that's caused me a lot of concern for a while.
Yeah.
Yes. So
The one with the EPA, simply, I find it a little bit distasteful that the EPA will be the ones that will be the overseeing authority to look into any noise complaints. And I don't know. You'll probably know a lot more than me. That if the passing of that legislation is that we're not going to have noise complaints, if the wind farm goes up, you can't make a complaint. You then have to go to the EPA to do it. That's why I'm a little bit hesitant about that. What's the EPA got to do with it?
Yeah.
And are they part of the state government as well? That's the other one.
Thanks,
Because
Mr.
state
Costa.
government haven't been helpful.
Any further questions? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Good on you.
Thank you. Miss Joy Howley, please.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Council, for the opportunity.
Thanks, Miss Howley. You're welcome to begin.
I'm here in support of the Hawkesdale community. I'm not of the Hawkesdale community. I personally come from Caravan. But I would like to add to my comments that I made in the email that I sent to the councillors that's included in the agenda, so I won't repeat them. But it's basically the concern for yet another small rural town in Moyne being treated unfairly. Surely the objective should be that the renewables development, that it works all right for everyone. But that's not happening. The threat of the Hawkesdale wind development has gone on for many years. I think you just said 12. Many residents are feeling exhausted and that their health, assets and lifestyle are constantly under threat. I agree, it's a health and safety issue. Up the road, Penshurst could have gone the same way, but with a bit of help and rejection of a wind development, it has a thriving farming and business community, and people are moving in to live and enjoy what the township has to offer. It's got a buzz about it, and it's captured the rural revival. Hawkesdale too is a lovely rural township, also placed amongst some of the most exceptional and reliable farming land in Australia. On a main road, beautiful school, pool, hall, historic buildings, a store that always has cars around it, and some small businesses just having a go. A lot of young professionals attended that meeting on the 5th of December. This should not be a dying town. There's loads of potential. It should also be enjoying the rural revival. But instead, it's threatened. With town boundaries contracted in an inexplicable way, is it true that the school and the swimming pool are outside the town boundary? Don't know.
I believe so.
It's extraordinary. I mean, anyway. Shops are closed, doors shut, they've got the message. Nobody's helping them. Families who once lived within the town boundary are now outside of it and are at the mercy of the wind developers taking the opportunity to come in over them. There is no protection offered by the relevant authorities. No part of the process gives them any confidence to individuals, or it seems towns are protected from the wind juggernaut. You wonder why they are cross and are looking for council help. We already have sufficient turbines in Moyne to know what can happen. It's appropriate that this motion is tabled at Mortlake. Sadly, a fine example of the most appalling renewables planning in Victoria. It's most certainly not working out all right for everyone. Wind developers know every trick in the book, and they are operating without real oversight. poor and biased planning practices are encouraged them to treat residents with contempt. There are many problems, but this is one that could just help to solve some of them. Those who choose to live in Hawkesdale for the rural piece must have some means to protect themselves against illegal noise levels, should they occur here as has happened elsewhere. This motion goes to the heart of that. We all understand there are only certain things that the Shire can do in the renewable planning process. But you can offer help here, you can do this. Please support this motion to help achieve some fairness for your constituents. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Ms Howley. Do you have any questions, please? Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. Again, I agree with a lot of your concerns, and I hope that you feel that Council is and has been advocating for quite some time regarding some of those concerns, particularly with this town setbacks. As I said, I can say that we all agree that it is way too close to the town. Again, I'll say my question again that I've mentioned about the independence. Would you support Council looking into and getting a report about the possibility of an independent acoustician that is EPA registered?
Look, I'm happy for you to find an independent acoustician. But I think you will find, like we has been found by us, that the EPA has got a problem because most acousticians are employed by the wind companies, and they're certainly not independent.
Yep. Thank you.
Other councillors with questions? Councillor Dugas.
Thank you. Hello, George. How are you?
Good, Jim.
Thanks for coming and putting your view forward. If the wind farm's built, and for whatever reason, the school goes from P12 to P6, what'll that do for Hawkesdale?
Well, as I said, I'm not of Hawkesdale, but I can observe where schools have diminished or gone from other townships. And it really takes the heart out of the school because they are a central meeting place. And that school at Hawkesdale, it's in a beautiful setting, it's immaculate the way it's been kept. The teachers really try hard, they're very good with the children, and it has been an exceptional school, and there's no reason why it couldn't be that again. But the town has lost its confidence because, as John says, they can't get any answers. It's a threat that hangs over them all the time.
Sally, any further questions? Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll remain on topic and we'll go to Mr. George Swarbrick, please. Welcome, Mr. Swarbrick. You're right to begin now, if you like.
Thank you. Hello, for those that don't know me, my name's George Swarbrick. It's been mentioned. Basically just a little bit of background, raised and in Willatook on a dairy farm, and eventually made the big move to Hawkesdale and built a house. I've been there for 35 years, so I've got a fair understanding of the people, etc. Just excuse if I do get a bit emotional sometimes, but that's just the bloke I am, so just bear with me on that. First, I'd like to thank the Moyne Shire for allowing me to speak today, so thanks very much. And secondly, to Jim for raising the motion, as we know what the motion is, to perhaps the Moyne Shire engaging in the services of independent parties for noise testing. I'm here on probably myself. I'm here on behalf of the Hawkesdale community, all intermingled, to support the motion and hope that some of the statements that I've got to say may have a positive effect on all the councillors here today with their voting whenever that may get done on this motion, on Jim's motion. We've all heard over a long period of time the information given by the wind farm companies and the proponents, that the proponents always canvass at public meetings, and the so-called qualified experts that they have there filling us up with a lot of, well, I call it propaganda. Anyone can call it what they like. But, and it's right through from those meetings that have been over 12 years, both Willertalk, Hawkesdale and around the place. And it's basically right up through government, up to state and federal, that we're all fed with this information that, okay, we try and work out what's going on with it all. The wind farm proponents obviously believe that they can just come into an area, as per Hawkesdale, and just take over. That's what they're doing. Take over as if we don't exist. That's what they do. Okay? They've got all the qualifications, the experts, but I'm not qualified in any of those areas. I don't plan to be, I don't want to be. But what I am qualified in, okay, that I'm a loyal Hawkesdale person with real feelings and genuine concerns for the next generations, not mine, but the next generations of people who are wanting or may come to Hawkesdale or the area, the township. Wind farms don't have emotional data. It's something they don't have. All the rest they do, but not emotional data. I'm so concerned about the negative impact on the township that the wind farms will have. It'll virtually close the town down, as it's been perhaps mentioned. Will it? Who knows? Do we take the risk? I've been heavily involved in areas of the Hawkesdale Community Organisation, especially the Hawkesdale Footy Club. With the proposed close proximity of the wind farm to the footy ground, we will literally have a new player called A Tower, standing very tall at 180 metres in the full forward spot. On the wing, on the east of the boundary of the footy ground, there'll be a tall wingman, another 180 metres, tall flankers. The footy team will be spot on. Might seem a bit of a joke to everybody here, but that's pretty much how it will be. That's how close they are. Get a feeling for it, everybody. We all want to come to Hawkesdale to live in a maze of wind farms, especially if the Willertalk area gets up and going. They're already out the northwest of us. They could be at the south west of us in Willertalk. They're going to be smack bang southeast of us and east of Hawkesdale, all around us. So irrespective of where the wind's coming from, it'll be quiet some days, but other times we're going to cop it whichever way we go to get this noise. You can all have a genuine say in Hawkesdale's future and for the generation to come. Hawkesdale was sited over 150 years ago, and please let it live for another 150 years.
Sorry, Mr. Swabby, you're just at the 5-minute mark, so if you wouldn't mind just wrapping up there, please.
Right. Okay. Hopefully this motion today is viewed favourably, and that Hawkesdale residents and all the community may have a chance to have a lifestyle that they deserve. And we heard the expiry date of the wind farms. We all said, great, it's gone. We've got our life back. We've got our emotional life back. We're just going all through it again. If this helps, this motion, please help us. That's all I'm asking. Nothing more. Independent. If that helps, put off the wind farms in Hawkesdale. Great. It's a starting point. We want a starting point. You guys can help us. I can't. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Swabby, for your presentation. Councillor questions now. Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Swarbrick. Really appreciated the passion you gave that. It does show your real emotion and feelings for the project. Look, I'll speak for myself rather than the other councillors. I personally believe that they're too close to the town. The issue is, though, that this council has very little in regard to ability to do anything about it, if anything. So my question to you is, okay, let's pass the motion that we get an independent assessment. Whether that complements the work that's being done or it contradicts the work that's being done, what do you expect the state government to do with that, even though we do actually prepare an alternative? Do you expect the state government will do something with it?
Well, I can't. You've got to walk before you can climb or run, okay? This has been fooled around, say other words, for 12 years. And I can remember when Janet McCosh came up to the council there and was a strong voice 12 months, 18 months ago. She put so much work in it, it was a starting point. Okay, we've got to start again. And that permit expired. And government can just change, above your hands here, government just change the laws to suit themselves, and we all know that. So, we just all puppets to the system, excuse that language, but, okay, that permit expired, and it was gone. We said, great. All our hard work, there was hard work behind the scenes, emotional hard work, a lot of that. But, okay, it starts again. And we're all up for the fight again. Okay, we're here to fight. So, I know what you're saying is, how can we change the state view on it? You'll never change the state view on it. They'll keep changing laws to eradicate me, to eradicate you, to eradicate the Moyne Shire from saying next to nothing. But you're all here. I've got to start somewhere.
Okay.
So please.
Yep.
That's all I can say is a starting point.
Thank you.
Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks for your presentation. Similar to Councillor Purcell, I appreciate your raw honesty and sharing in a public forum. My question is again about the independence, and would you support council to bring a report back to seek an independent acoustician?
Well, I think that's been well documented today. We're all in a position wanting these noise testings to be valid.
Yep.
And with you answer your question, I'm like John. I'm a chippy. I don't have that expertise. I don't have the qualifications for it. So, with regards to the answer, I can't give you a qualified answer to it. But you know where I'm coming from.
Absolutely. Yeah. One more.
Follow up. Yep.
We've heard a bit today about that Hawkesdale is struggling a little bit, over the last few years.
Yes.
And in some of the areas of the Shire, we've seen the positive benefits of wind farms in terms of job growth and, ecotourism or different things like that. Is there anything positive, if the setbacks to the town were changed, that you would see from a wind farm being at Hawkesdale? Is there any positives at all? To obviously local farmers, getting money for the turbines and things like that, or money for sports clubs or for the community and things like that. Do you see any benefits to the town from the proposal?
Well, with regards to that, with perhaps getting grants from these so-called people, well, organisations, hall biddies, pools, footy clubs operated and funded money themselves from their own source prior to these wind farms. So, if the wind farms aren't there, okay, I wouldn't even worry about that money because they'll source it from elsewhere. We'll find it elsewhere, as we've always done.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and look, I'm not anti-wind farms, not anti-wind farms, but you all appreciate and understand that they're going to be right there. As I said, right beside the full forward.
Yeah.
Come on, I know you guys and ladies cannot do a hell of a lot, but give us a starting point, please, of where we can go from here. Or I'd just prefer you to say, we can't do anything.
Thanks, Councillor Gleeson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. George, you just put it all together, how hard it is to come and present, I get all that. And just your emotion says it all. And, I want to delve into that a bit because you talked about community. What about the people that were canvassed and have agreed to host wind farms? You know, what's their connection to the community?
Well, in regard to Hawkesdale, there's two people. There's two farms, basically. One's my brother-in-law. He's cleared off to Western Australia. He doesn't want to be here. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but... and the other one, I won't name names, you guys who that are, they've all got them up their property. Basically, two people will benefit. The person that has the majority of them, never seen. Never seen. They're probably hard-working people, never seen. Not involved with the community one iota. So your question was, sorry,
So,
will they...
yeah, so I think you've answered it. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions, Councillor Gleeson?
No.
No, all good. Any further questions? Thanks very much, Mr. Swarbrick. Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Lachlan Cumming, please. Welcome, Mr. Cumming. You're right to go ahead and make a start when you're ready.
Thank you. Welcome to the new councillors on the council. It is of importance to notify these newly elected councillors of the problems we are facing up here at Mortlake District regarding the Mount Fines Wind Farm proposal. 2.5 years ago, no information could be found with ease, even to the neighbours of the proposal. No well-publicised community consultation had come from the company Woolnorth, or even the council for that matter, even though there appears to be a Shire-issued document with knowledge of part of this proposal dating back a further 8 years, and despite the council having been engaged in doing some work for the company. So here is a rough timeline of some of the crap we've had to deal with so far for council, who should be helping the ratepayer, if there is a majority. June, July 2018. Asking for information at the local Shire office, got passed on to the Major Projects Liaison Officer. The response I got from this person was, and I quote, "It is not my job to liaise with you, I'll only liaise with the companies." How about that to tell a ratepayer? August 2018, most councillors, including Mayor, contacted for information. None knew anything, they claimed. Very strange, for Woolnorth newsletter number 4 from the previous month mentioned councillors participating in a council workshop with the company.
Sorry, Mr. Cumming, we're being live streamed at the moment, and could you sit down so we could get your view on the camera, please? So for the audience at home watching.
Yeah, well, will this do?
Yeah, that'd be good, thanks. Yep.
Can I just stand?
All sit down. No, if you could sit down, please, so we can all be on the same level. That'd be terrific. Thanks.
Yeah, right.
Sky News, mate.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
August 2018, council meeting. Many people made the trip to Port Fairy for the first time to let council know that a large number of people were saying no to the proposal, as proven with 277 letters of objection handed in on the night. Council opted to install a CEC. Unnecessary, the people said. We've already been engaged and simply don't want the project. September 2018, council was asked to conduct a town meeting. Through the acting CEO, they declined this request. 12 days later, community members had organised their own town meeting with only Councillor Dukas offering help from council. 470 people turned up, the vast majority voting with a simple no. They did not want the Mount Fines wind farm. Council were present and were instructed to publicise. They were not effective in doing so. September 2018 council meeting. Tim Howarth, Mortlake resident, produced various maps to council and exposed some truths that even council were not aware of. Where are these maps now, and why have they not been continuously publicised by council, if they have merit? November 2018 council meeting. Councillors voted no more wind farms in Moyne till further notice. What happened to this? For merely 5 months later, council introduced a 125 turbine proposal being in nearby Hexham, Karamat and Ellerslie. CEO would not answer questioning in regards to how this current ban would affect Mount Fine's proposal. December 2018, a councillor was asked for help by Mortlake resident Tim Howarth. Tim gave some of council's own documents to this councillor in the hope they could protect Mortlake district and surrounds from a threatening Mount Fine's wind farm proposal. 2 years on, Tim Howarth has received no correspondence from the councillor on this matter. August and September 2019 council meetings. Councillor Ryan was told that his idea of a fund for prospective wind farm companies to bribe the communities was offensive and unfounded, but he knew best and the floodgates opened. 1 month later, a wind farm company employee at a licensed Moynshire facility told desperate for money community groups that despite community objection, they must seek funding from Wool North and Wind Prospect, even though they had no permits. Council made no public airing or shaming of these lies and propaganda under their watch, although it was asked of them. September 2019, a councillor was asked to come for a quick walk up Mount Shadwell when it would suit him on his time. This request was made with relevance to issues around the Mount Fine's proposal to be looked at from up the top of Mount Shadwell. The councillor declined this ask, citing he was too busy to do such a thing. Fair enough, people are busy and may not have time. Funny though, how 2 months later, he took an extra job on, full-time at council, on top of existing workload. That hour must have been crucial to his already pressing schedule. May 2020, Mortlake and district residents blindsided when a local Section 86 committee, overseen by council and chaired by Councillor Parker, had asked Wool North for 50 grand. This was despite huge community objection to the company, and despite Councillor Parker previously removing herself from issues surrounding Wool North, declaring some sort of conflict of interest. During the July 20 council meeting, questions surrounding Councillor Parker and this 50 grand were asked with only silence given. Responses have still not been issued by council.
Thanks, Mr. Cumming. You're at the 5-minute mark, so if you'd just like to wrap up there, please.
Last one. Residents of Mortlake and District are sick of the crap that comes with the contempt that we are shown to the new councillors. Put your own egos, alliances and agendas aside and actually listen to a community in large number who want you to help Jim Dukas help us. Ask how we want the fight to be fought. And to council, including the 3 councillors who are on the CEC meeting tonight, the community demand that you shove these objections in the face of the company Wool North. There's over 600 of them now. I'm going to present them, and I ask that they be presented by a councillor to the CEC tonight. I tried contacting the company last week, but the bloke who's been sending out letters, he's not here till February, so it's a bit difficult.
I think that present it to the mayor and he'll do what needs to be done.
Go with one of the councillors tonight. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Cumming. Do we have any questions for Mr. Cumming? Councillor Smith.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mead. Thanks, Mr. Cumming, for your presentation. As it's the state government issuing the permits, could you just explain what contact you've tried to make with the Minister for Planning, and also in this upper house wedge in the upper house of State Parliament, we have 2 ministers, Gail Tierney and Yala Pulford. I see each week in the Mortlake Dispatch, Gail Tierney, I'm here to help you. I'm just wondering, what contact have you had with these members of Parliament? Because obviously if somebody can get the ear of the minister, it'd be 2 of the Labor Party ministers. So have you made any contact with them or tried to make contact and express your concerns? Because I'm greatly concerned about the Mount Fine's wind farm too, but we have very limited capacity to affect the outcome. So could you just explain, have you contacted our local cabinet members in the state government?
All right, so out of those 600 objections, they're individual letters, they're not just one mass petition. There's individuals, right? I'm not part of the group, but as individuals, we work with each other, you know, behind the scenes, as everyone does in small communities. And my focus has been on other issues surrounding the Mount Fine's wind farm at what I've been told is a national level, where we can try and angle the federal government on some issues that we think might overrun. I've brought some of them up last year with migratory birds and things like that, and the council did actually take a look at that, and I thank them for that. As far as the state department goes, I know that there's other people, other individuals that have been going at the state. I haven't myself, but as I said, I've been going down other avenues. And as a collective, not as a group, as a collective community, everyone's doing what they can in all different. There's no point us all running over the same track all the time, but there are plenty of people going at the state about things, but I can't speak for them, and I haven't had personal contact with whoever you're talking about.
Right, so you haven't made contact with them?
Okay, thanks. Any further questions for Mr Cumming?
And I'm very aware that it's not a wind farm. I don't know about the small ones these days, but in general, the wind farms aren't decided upon by the Shire. I'm very aware of that. My points that I've made today, when we ask for advocacy, we would really like it, if it came, at least look at a collection of the community and go, geez, there's a fair whack there, we need to support them instead of waiting to sit on the fence to see which side we'll go on. And we're just, for 2.5 years now, we've been asking the Shire, come on, come and help. We've been finding the groups of people. We had to even conduct a town meeting ourselves, as I explained, and you were there.
Yeah.
And it was a great turnout. I don't know how many people, over 470, have turned up in Mortlake on a Monday night in a hall. It just doesn't happen. And
Thanks,
they
Mr.
showed up
Cumming.
in number.
Yep. Other questions? Councillor Gleeson?
Lockie, through you, Mr. Lockie, just again, as I spoke to George, the emotion of it all. So what about the people that have sold their soul? How many people are benefiting from the Mounts Fines wind farm?
You'd be talking about the host landowners.
The host landowners.
Councillor Gleeson, is that a question that's sort of relevant to the address? I don't think it is. I'm not sure if it is.
Well, I just want to get some,
Well, we're not talking about host landholders. We're talking about wind farms in Moyne and what Moyne can do to advocate, is what I gather Mr Cummings'
I'd
address
imagine
is.
there's 8 of them,
And
and
whose
6
side
of
are
them
you
probably
on?
don't live on their property.
Whose side of the mayor's on?
Excuse me, Councillor Durgis. Any further questions?
Bloody hell.
Any further questions? Thanks, Mr Cumming. Thanks for your address.
I implore you to chuck those in front of the company tonight, please.
They'll be passed on. Yep, no problem.
But actually, tell them how this community do not want this thing. Punch them in the head with it.
Thanks, Mr Cumming.
It's been going on far too long.
Okay, move on to Mr Stephen Mackey, please. To present on Moyne Libraries.
Okay.
Welcome, Mr Mackey. You're welcome to begin.
Thanks very much. Steve Mackey, I live in Koroit, so I'd just like to say how powerful I found the discussion up till now, and that I did come across a lot of that discussion when I stood for council unsuccessfully. My question is about the future of Moyne's library system. I've seen the comment from our mayor in the December 11 Corangamite Shire news release, where Councillor Mead is quoted as saying, this is in the Corangamite Shire news release, regional libraries and their programmes and services have an important role to play in our towns. It is timely a review is carried out into the future library management model, given the withdrawal of the Warrnambool and Colac councils. We are working closely with Corangamite Shire to investigate a management model that will continue to provide library services in Moyne. In the same news release, Corangamite Shire Mayor Ruth Gestin is quoted as saying, Corangamite are committed to ensuring our residents continue to receive a high level of public library service provision. The Corangamite Shire release goes on to say that regional libraries were far more than just book lenders. They provide education and literacy programs, social connections, access to technology, and refuge during extreme temperatures. Now, that's to put a bit of the background. I have a few questions. Does Moyne endorse the commitment by Michael Schultz, would that be the correct person? Michael Schultz, in his email to Port Fairy University of the Third Age, dated August 26, shortly before Mr. Schultz's retirement as CEO of Corangamite Regional Libraries Corporation, where he wrote, "Both councils are passionate about the importance of a good library service to their communities and will be taking every step to ensure that the local libraries within Moyne and Corangamite Shires will continue to operate and deliver this important service at the current level within your community. Does the council, this council, agree that this means the retention at the same level of staffing and bricks and mortar for the libraries in Mortlake, Koroit and Port Fairy, the outreach library service to Peterborough and Nullawarra, you got it, and the service point at Macarthur as well as the same quality of access to all the same books, relatively speaking, to all the same books and other items, which will be renewed and updated as before with the same rate of new purchases, and that there will be widely networked borrowing from other libraries and sources. What future improvements and renewals should Moyne residents anticipate in technology, social and educational activities and information services in the reconstituted library system? What process is in hand to consult Moyne residents about the creation of the new library service? That's my main questions. Can I just sneak in a quick little one? On a separate matter, during the election campaign, many Koroit locals asked about the services and activity spaces which have been suspended and closed at Mill Street, Koroit, campus of Moyne Health Services because of the building's structural problems. Some complained of not being sufficiently informed of the situation. Is the Shire concerned about this close down, and if so, what action is it taking to help Moyne Health Services in this regard?
Thanks, Mr. Maggie. Councillor Foster.
Mr. Mayor, can I just declare a conflict of interest in relation to my role as Chair of Moyne Health Services for that question?
Thank you. Mr. Miller might be able to help with some of those questions.
Perhaps if I could take that one, and maybe Mr. Ledden could help with the matters relating to the library. Thanks for the question. The Mayor and myself have recently met with Moyne Health Services, particularly around that issue, the structural challenges at that campus. And I'll be issuing an invitation to the board and CEO of Moyne Health to present to this council in the early 2021, basically to hear that and work out how we could support the services that are offered out of that service.
Mr. Ledden.
The earlier that people in Koroit and around find out what's going on there, it would help a great deal.
Yeah, perhaps I could just clarify, couldn't agree more. It's obviously an issue that Moyne Health must manage, but our role is to support them and the community in that matter. Yeah.
And Mr. Ledden to help with the library questions.
Through you, Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Mackey. So I think all of the questions you asked, which are really valid questions, are going to be enveloped in a current study that's been done around what the future of our library services look like. That press release was intended as a joint press release between the two councils. So we're working very closely with the Corangamite Shire Council to review, I guess, principally the governance arrangements, given the withdrawal of 2 members from the Corangamite Regional Library Service. But that will come to council shortly, and then it will be put out for public consultation. So it will address, I think, pretty much all of the matters that you raised. I think in short, the council hasn't discussed it yet, but the commitment around library services will certainly be maintained.
Thanks, Mr. Ledden. Do any councillors have any questions for Mr. Mackey?
Probably a statement, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor, if I
Purcell?
could.
Yep.
Look, from my point of view, and I know most of the councillors around here are strong advocates for the library. I think a lot of us are members of the library, and we'll certainly do what is possible. But it is basically what's said is it's actually too early to have a look at a new service model. But I think as councillors we do certainly support the benefits that we get out of libraries, and we'll be doing what we can to make certain that it works.
Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to highlight, I've also got an overdue cookbook from the Port Fairy Library, which I will be returning shortly. It won't fit in the return chute, it's too thick. But yeah, I agree. We definitely want to support our libraries and look forward to that report coming to council. Thanks for your presentation.
Any further questions? Thanks very much, Mr. Mackey, for your presentation. Thank you. Just lastly, we do have a letter from a ratepayer that's asked to be read out. It's not normally within the public participation guidelines, but we had discussion earlier due to the limited amount of numbers that are available in the gallery at the moment. We're happy to read this one out, so I'll ask Mr. Millard to read out the letter, please, from Mr. Hamish Cumming.
Thank you, Mayor. The title is Proposed Brolga Standards Council Submission, a matter later in the agenda. I would like the following read out at the council meeting during public participation. Councillors, please refer to the emails I sent you on 6 December and 13 December. With the evidence and reports referred to in these emails, I ask you to demand the CEO scrap the proposed submission to Dwelt for the Brolga sharing that he is putting forward on the agenda to this meeting. The Moyne Shire have Yambuck, Codrington, Mortons Lane, Macarthur, Salt Creek and Dundonald wind farms operating in the Shire. Post-completion reports for all these wind farms except Dundonald have been issued to the Moyne Shire, as well as a very detailed report by Biosis on Yambuck Codrington, clearly showing displacement and breeding failures. Many more wind farms are approved or proposed for the Moyne Shire, so a cumulative impact on Brolga is steadily building. These reports and the Dundonald EES report clearly show the proposed standard is misinformed and deficient of facts, and the Moyne Shire should be highlighting these facts. Dot points are: no Brolga have nested within 5 kilometres of turbines. Brolga have dropped in population by as much as 86% within 5 kilometres of turbines, for unexplained reasons by Shire or wind farm companies. Brolga nest on and successfully fledged chicks from saline wetlands and salt lakes. Cranes have been witnessed flying through turbines to their death and documented by PhD student Laura Navarrete. Brolga breeding home ranges have been shown by GPS tracking data to be a minimum of 5 kilometres by PhD student Inka Velteam. Site visits and landholder records are vital to collecting all available information and should be included in the standard. Migration must be included as a requirement in the standard for impact on Brolga by death, displacement or failure or to breed. Please act now to make the council officers and the CEO write an accurate and fact-based submission that will protect Brolga, not push it to extinction. Wind farms can be built elsewhere. They don't have to be built in Brolga habitat. Brolga have nowhere else to go, and remember, when you protect a Brolga breeding wetland, you protect at least 60 other threatened and protected species as well. Thanks. Hamish Cumming, Darlington.
Thanks, Mr. Millard. Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know it's odd to ask a question of someone that's not here, but my question regarding the letter that was read out is to Michelle Granger, if possible.
Ms. Granger.
The points that Hamish has made in the letter seem like, you know, they'd be good to be included. Is that's not really the role of council to include public participation? So would Mr. Cumming be better off to submit his letter to DELP directly?
I think Mr. Millard's happy to respond.
Sorry, it was a long-winded way of saying it, but I got there, I think.
As the reader of the letter.
I guess, can I summarise what I understand by the question, Mayor, which is there's a number of points made there by Mr. Cumming.
Yeah.
Should they be included in our submission? I guess that's a matter for council when the this item is dealt with on the agenda shortly, I guess what my advice to Mr Cumming would be to submit the submission. It's called for by the department. Any member of the community can make a submission. Council will determine later on tonight or today whether or not you want me to submit the submission we're putting in front of you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks. That concludes the public participation section of the meeting. Councillor Purcell.
Mr Mayor, could I move that we consider items 5 and 12 at this stage with the gallery? They both relate to the Hawkesdale Wind Farm, so if I could move that.
Second that.
Seconded by Councillor Foster. All in favour? Carried 7-0. So we'll move to, in order, item 5, please, which is the re-establishment of community engagement committees for the Hawkesdale Wind Farm and Ryan Corner Wind Farm, presented by Ms Granger, who is the Major Projects Officer.
Thank you, Mayor. This report seeks to re-establish the community engagement committees for Ryan Corner and Hawkesdale. They disbanded in 2018. This report recommends that the committees comprise 2 councillors, up to 4 community representatives and 2 members of CPG, GPG, and that we go out for a public notification process calling for expressions of interest for members of the community.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If we were to look at increasing the number of community representatives, would this be the space to do it, or when it comes back to council?
So this process enables us to give notice and then a report will come back to council where you'll decide on the community members. It would be appropriate then if you wanted to appoint more to consider that item.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Dukas.
If we were going to appoint more, wouldn't that have to come back as a motion?
So it will, there is an opportunity. This report just triggers a process for a report to come back to you to appoint a committee.
So what's wrong with just changing the 4 to 6 now? Be done with it.
Councillor
Seems
Dukas.
rather logical, then we don't have to take step 3, 4 and 5.
No, but Councillor Dukas, I believe it to be, when the representatives or the applications come in, that has to be a motion who we accept and put on there, and at that stage we could make it, I believe we could make it 6.
I'm sorry, but that's about as Irish as you can get. Why can't we change the 4 to 6 now, and it doesn't matter how many people nominate, whether it's 2, 3 or 15, we can appoint up to 6.
Up to 6.
Yeah, so what's the difference? Do it now.
Well, that's...
Through you, Mr Dukes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. That's that can be moved as part of the motion, if you like. Any further questions for Ms Granger?
Could I just
Councillor Gleeson?
just get a point of clarification, please, Michelle? We're reinstating these. Could you just, in light of what we've been presented with today, why were they stopped in 2018?
So we separated the committees and had 2, and there was, at that stage in 2018, didn't look like the projects were likely to go ahead, and therefore there wasn't the need to meet regularly. It was the recommendations of the committee to disband.
No further questions? I'll seek a
No,
mover.
Sorry, Miss. Yeah, one
Councillor
quick
Lucas.
clarification. I seek the view of the councillors. I might move that we did the 6, but would it be wise to have a haddock rep? I know we've talked about community, but would it be fair to have someone from haddock represent that group as a member of that committee for the Hawkesdale one?
Wouldn't they have?
So, you want to specify in there,
Well, I'll just-
one of those community reps be from Haddock?
Well, whether, if you lift it to 6, one of those could be a haddock member and identify themselves at the meeting as I am representing haddock. It's just a thought. I thought it'd be good to be able to give them, as their own identity, a representation on the committee.
Councillor Purcell?
We don't have a problem with that at all, Mr Mayor. We're probably going to need to redo this because we're actually establishing 2 committees, and I doubt whether Haddock want to be on the Ryan's Corner committee, so it's going to have to be rejigged if we want to put identified groups who are going to go on that particular committee.
True. So, Councillor Dukas, if you'd like to move with those changes.
I'll move with the changes that we changed from up to 4 to 6, and we'll have a Part D that had it be given the opportunity to provide a member to the committee.
To the Hawkesdale one.
To the Hawkesdale committee.
Okay.
Or words to that effect.
Everyone clear on what the motion is?
Is that
Councillor
one of
Gleeson?
6?
Yep. I believe so, 1 of 6. Is that right, Councillor Dugas?
Yeah, I reckon 1 of
Yep.
6. That leaves 5 community reps, that should cover it.
Everyone clear on that motion? All right, I'll seek a seconder for that motion.
Second that.
Councillor Foster's second. Councillor Dugas to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, straightforward, we're re-establishing Hawkesdale and Ryan Corner. The changes, as you all know, is 6 with 1 Haddock rep for Hawkesdale. The same for Ryan's Corner. Things are starting happening. We've received a few emails already in regard to Ryan's Corner. There is grave concern out there about that wind farm being built and the effect on the neighbours, and even on Port Fairy. It'll be a nice little sightseeing thing, just look into the horizon and see a few wind farms blowing in the wind. But besides that, straightforward procedural matter.
Thanks, Councillor Dugas. Councillor Foster?
I'll just support that, Councillor Dugas's comments, and just say I think we've heard a little bit today about the impact of wind farms on our communities, and we need strong community voices and representation. So, yes, I'm very happy to support this.
Councillor Foster, any other councillors wishing to comment for or against? Councillor Lockett?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Obviously, speak in favour of the motion, agree with the comments said thus far. And the establishment of a community engagement committee doesn't mean it's pro or anti-wind farm. It's a funnel for the community to have their say and hopefully assist in some advocacy work for the community and for the community. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Lockett. Any other councillors? Back to Councillor Dukas.
No need, Mr Mayor.
Councillors voting on item 5 with those couple of changes as detailed at the start. All those in favour? Carried 7-0. Moving to item 12. Councillor notice of motion. Councillor Dukas, request for independent review of Hawkesdale Wind Farm noise reports. Councillor Dukas.
Thank you. Do you want me to read the recommendation out? Or motion, sorry?
Yes, please.
Okay, that Moyne Shire engage the services of an independent, suitably qualified acoustician, got it right for once, Bob Thorne, Stephen Cooper or Les Hewson, to verify that Hawkesdale Wind Farm planning permit 200602221A complies with all relevant permit conditions relating to noise, and make the report from this independent review available to the public. So, councillors, you've heard from people today.
Hang on, we'll see if we get a seconder. We get a seconder for the motion? Councillor Purcell seconded.
I'll second it so we can have a discussion on it.
Yep.
I hope we'd have a discussion. Okay,
Councillor
you've heard
Davis.
from various community members today. It's a straightforward recommendation to do independent. Now, I know that some councillors have an issue with independence and they keep referring back to the EPA, but to my knowledge, the only 3 I can think of that are independent, and as you've read, if you've read your emails from Wind Farm Living or Dominica, the lawyer lady, you'll see that there are some acousticians have already declared a conflict of interest because they've done so much work for wind farms. So without getting into too much detail and to and throwing with independence, one of those 3 I believe would be the best outcome. The idea is to get detailed reporting, noise reporting, as you heard from Mr Blaine. We don't have access to the company noise reports, which is ridiculous. I mean, the Shire should be able to write to the company and say, we want a copy, and we should get a copy. After all, we're the responsible authority. How can you be responsible for something you know nothing about? It defies logic, but then that's what happens in government. So I implore you all to support this. It's something, it'll set, I know as Councillor Purcell said, it'll set a precedent, but the community, whether it's Hawkesdale, Willatook, or amount fines, they need to be protected through independent reporting. And this is a good way for the Moyne Shire to show the people of the Shire that it backs them. So support the people, please.
Thanks, Councillor Dugas. Councillor Purcell?
I'll reserve my right.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to foreshadow an alternate motion.
Councillor Smith? Go ahead. Will you read the motion, please?
The motion, and some of this is courtesy of an email from Mrs. Joy Howley, who presented here earlier on, so I hope she doesn't take offence to me using some of that. The Moyne Shire conduct independent noise testing by an EPA accredited acoustician at a number of noise sensitive properties surrounding the proposed Hawkesdale wind farm, so that the community can verify the modelling which Marshall Day Acoustics has conducted for the proponent.
Okay, thanks. That is foreshadowed. Any councillor wishing to speak to the current motion?
Sorry, I've got
Councillor
a
Lockett?
question of Councillor Smith's foreshadowed motion. Is that possible? No.
No, we're dealing with the Councillor Dukas' motion at the moment. Any councillor wish to speak on Councillor Dukas' motion? Item 12. For or against?
Yep.
Councillor Gleeson?
I'd like to speak against it. I'm very sympathetic, but for 12 years this has been going on, and I feel as though the community have let themselves down, and it's only in the last 45 days that they've been whipped into a frenzy, and all of a sudden it's the Moyne Shire's fault. I thank Joy. She was the only person that presented that recognised that the hands of the council are tied, that we really don't have a lot to say about what we can do. In one of the letters that was presented today from Liana, I find it grossly unfair that my family may have to cover the cost of paying an independent ethical noise testing. One of the concerns I have goes back to the residents that took on AGL as victims, for whatever term, I can't think of a better term, of the Macarthur wind farm. They were asked to do, or they chose to do that, and they chose to, in a lot of senses, risk everything to do so. They didn't come to council and say, can you pay for this because we're affected. In some instances, neighbours and friends turned on each other. You know, there was a lot of social things throughout the pub, comments, etc., that made a lot of things very, very uncomfortable. And I don't find it hypocritical, that's the wrong word, but I find it frustrating that individuals back then took on the might of AGL, and now after this thing has been going for 12 years, the Hawkesdale community are asking us to pay for this study. If in any of the presentations they said we're prepared to put our money where our mouth is, then I think I would view that differently. So as it's written, then I'm against the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Gleeson. Any other councillors speaking to the motion, speaking to the current motion? Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very, tricky, long-standing circumstances, and I, again, agree with a lot of the concerns about the distance from the township, and absolutely agree it's too close. My concern, and I've flagged it pretty earlier on and asked everyone that presented about the independence of these three people. I have no issue with the council paying for independent testing, and I will ask and seek the support of council to bring a report back to council. We've got paid people that work in this area, and the councillor motion hasn't been informed from the council. So I support it in principle, but not, we've got three people that have been brought forward by anti-wind farm. So is it independent? Not really. That's my concern. So would I support something else of Councillor Smith's motion? Absolutely. I have no problem with getting the testing done or paying for it. That's not an issue. But I don't know how independent these people are. But I really want to explore further about getting independent testing done. Absolutely. So that's my confusing statement. Thank you.
Any other councillor wishing to speak on this current motion?
Yes.
Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Even though I foreshadowed an alternative motion, all along I've been greatly concerned about the Hawkesdale wind farm. Far too close to the town. And as Mr John Boss said, this is a very unique project, very close, far too close into the town. But what can we do? It's going to go ahead. We have a duty of care, I feel, as a Moyne Shire to the people of Hawkesdale and surrounding district. So what can we do? And with the Macarthur wind farm, much of the problem was seen with the background noise testing was came into question. About the quality of the monitors. Some of them had flat batteries. They were supposed to be in the wrong place. So I just feel that if we can do background testing, so we can do it now rather than coming back in 4 years' time or whenever the project is up and running, that we say we should have done it. But as Councillor Lockett said, our concern is about the acousticians, and I feel that by using EPA accredited acousticians, it takes the controversy out of it over whether they are independent or not. So the buck stops with the EPA because they basically set the standards, and this is what we've been pushing for. They should be helping the Moyne Shire in compliance of the Moyne Shire. Yes, we can do something. This was a statement there from one of our presenters, and I think as a Shire we can do something, and that is try and appoint an acoustician to take the background noise testing, so that can be put in the bottom drawer and brought out when the project's completed. So I'm just not sure where we go. If we could do with Councillor Dukas, I would be happy if the three names were removed to get the motion through, because I'm greatly concerned about Hawkesdale and district and the effect that this wind farm's going to have on it.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Any further? That's up left to me actually. Last one. For me,
Mr Mayor, I did reserve my right.
Yes, I'll come to you next.
Okay.
Yeah, that's me then you.
Yep, sorry.
And then we'll go to Councillor Dukas.
It's okay. I'll speak to the...
I've tried, Karen. Yeah, so I'll be speaking against the current motion as it stands. The few things I've heard today, Councillor Gleeson made some good points that I tend to agree with, and it comes back to that in the end the state are the issuer of the permit. DELP and the EPA have had involvement all the way through. We've heard from Mr Boss earlier about his continual efforts to try and get responses out of them. They have not been cooperative. In our time, we have also, over the past 4 years, advocated on numerous occasions on behalf of the Shire with regard to wind farms. As was mentioned earlier in an address, we put forward the motion no more wind farms in Moyne until several recommendations from the Wind Farm Commissioner were adopted. They haven't been adopted. We put that roughly in 2018, that motion, and that was passed. And then we reaffirmed it again just before the end of the previous council, the same motion, just to reiterate the point that no more wind farms in Moyne as it currently stands. Also, towards the end of the previous council, we advocated that the wind turbines are pushed further back or increased setback from the Hawkesdale Township, because we do agree that they are too close to the township. So we have listened to the concerns, we have advocated on several occasions, and what we can do is we can continue to do that. We are hopefully meeting with the Planning Minister in the new year. We'll be bringing up these topics again about what our concerns are for wind farms in Moyne, cumulative impacts, too close to towns, etc. So I believe we'll continue to represent the concerns regarding wind farms, but in a advocacy matter toward the state. Back to Councillor Foster as the reserve, Councillor Purcell as the reserver, thanks.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, just briefly, I seconded the motion so that we could discuss it rather than, but I won't be supporting it. The issues for me, there's a couple of them. One is, and look, I firstly like to commend Councillor Dukas on putting this up. He's obviously done a lot of work in preparing this motion. But I tried to do a bit of homework on the acousticians, Bob Thorne, Steve Cooper and Les Husson. And Councillor Dukas may want to provide a little bit of information about them, you know, size of their companies and that, because it's really difficult to find how independent they actually are. So that is one of the issues I've got. The other one, which is probably more important, is I think we all agree that the issue is that the turbines are too close to Hawkesdale, but that doesn't mean we have, you know, power to do too much about it. So one of the things that I really question here is, even if we do go through and get an independent assessment done, what do we do with it? You know, it's going to be one assessment that says this, and then the company have got another assessment that says that. So do we just then look at it? Do we give it to the minister? Does the minister take any notice of it? It's just another report, and so I'm not sure what the benefit is of just having it prepared without an end goal in mind. So, you know, maybe Councillor Dukas could clarify that in his summation as well. So for those reasons, I can't support that motion.
Thanks, Councillor Purcell. Back to Councillor Dukas as the mover to summarise, thanks.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Following on from Councillor Purcell, I'll ask him now, what report do we have at the moment? If we're not privy to the wind farms background noise reports or pre-construction, what report do we have? As the compliance, we're in charge of compliance, we don't have a report to go by. How are we going to make them compliant? We've seen many wind farms being caught out with their compliance. Just look at what happened down in Gippsland. What happened down there? The council said everything was okay until they were told to do the job properly, and they got caught out. Answering Councillor Gleeson, should know, couldn't Kalani know, Councillor Gleeson, in regard to Macarthur. The people at Macarthur begged the Shire to do something, and they didn't. And when they finally did, it was an insult. Their investigation under the Health and Wellbeing Act was an absolute insult. And if my memory serves me correct, I think we've done some background noise testing in about 2018. Ms Granger could help me out here. Did we do some background testing on Macarthur in 2018 to do with complaints?
Not that I'm aware of, Councillor Dukas. I need more specific
It was
information.
it was in the Macarthur confidential report. Anyway, well, I didn't express anything confidential. I'm just saying the report was done, and it was a public document. I've got one floating around somewhere that doesn't have confidential on it. Yet, when they get to the steps of the court, AGL forked out millions of dollars to adjoining landowners. Now, if they were doing everything right, why would they pay? Are they that generous? They don't mind throwing a few dollars at the footy club or some other clubs to try and keep peace in the community, to make themselves look important. But those companies don't go paying out millions of dollars unless they've got something to hide. And why do they claim confidentiality? Why do they get those people to sign a form that says they won't release any of that information, ever? Have you asked yourselves that, councillors? What is there to hide? Yet here we are, all I'm asking for is to get independence, and the reason these people are here because other companies have already declared conflicts of interest with even though they're listed with the EPA. They are conflicted. Now, Councillor Smith, you should know that. Talking about doing the EPA Act, getting one person on their list, that's just a cop-out. Sorry, Councillor, but that is. You should be talking about independence, true independence, not some mob that's been paid by the
What
Wind
is a
farm
true
commission.
independent?
Thanks,
Councillor
Councillor Smith,
Dukas?
it's not a debate, just
Well,
continue
it is
summary,
a
please.
debate, because it's
Not
an
now,
insult,
it's
it's an
your
insult to
summary.
these people to say to get the EPA when all those companies have been working for wind farms from day one. One does the noise testing, the other does the peer review, and the next wind farm that comes along, they swap over. So who's kidding who? And it's been proven. I'm sure we got Mr. Allen sitting here. He's got a report that says that the wind farm's noise report is full of rubbish. Well, 2 reports should be put on the table and debated through council and the wind technicians have done the report. That's what you do with reports. You can't debate one report on its own if you haven't got something to go by. This is quite simple. It's $20,000 to $30,000. It's for an independent report, and it's to give us a report that we don't already have because we're not entitled to it. So maybe Mr. Millard can extract from the wind farm company their data report. I don't know what's in it, and I don't know how accurate it is. We've got the emails from Wind Farm Living about where they set up their equipment, surrounded by three gates and 50 head of cattle. Geez, that'd be interesting on the tape. And as Councillor Smith said, sometimes they don't work, sometimes the batteries are flat. A person or a landowner who has noise testing on their property by the company, when they asked the company if they could put their own independent testing next to the company one, are told no, you can't, or we won't test. So you tell me, what are they hiding? Why can't you have 2 tests at the same time by 2 different companies? This will fix that problem. Either you fix the problem, support the people, or go down the path of the old council who are Clayton supporters of wind farms.
Thanks, Councillor Dugas. We'll put the motion to the vote now. The motion is as listed in item 12 on the agenda. All those in favour? Councillor Dugas, Councillor Smith. Those against? Councillor Foster, Lockett, Mead, Purcell and Gleeson. The motion is lost. We now go to Councillor Smith's foreshadowed motion. Councillor Smith, could you read that out again, please?
Right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Moyne Shire conduct independent noise testing by an EPA accredited acoustician at a number of noise-sensitive properties surrounding the proposed Hawkesdale wind farm, so that the community can verify the modelling which Marshall Day Acoustics has conducted for the proponents.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Foster has seconded that motion. You can speak to that now. Thanks, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, we've been talking a long time about this. I am greatly concerned about Hawkesdale and the noise, and seeing what happened with the MacArthur wind farm, where there wasn't evidence of prior, or there was conflicting evidence over the background noise testing. So unfortunately the EPA probably are the umpire in the state, so we have to basically obey by their rules. No disrespect to the Mrs. Thorne, Cooper and Hewson, but if we come along with their report and their accreditation is not up to standard, well, we've just wasted our money. So look, I'm greatly concerned about the noise that can be impacting on Hawkesdale, and I think it's a great opportunity for the Shire to show the community that we are going to support them by paying, the Moyne Shire paying for a noise test to be done on surrounding properties around the Shire. So I'd just like you to support my alternate motion to give the, as Councillor Dukas said, what do we do with it? I think it would be a great piece of information to have moving forward, and when the wind farm is completed, and if there may not be controversy over the noise testing. It may be compliant, it may not, but I think it would be a great document for the Moyne Shire to have, because there's no good saying in 4 years' time we should have done it. Now is the time that we should be looking to do it. And I'm just there trying to come out I'm nearly there with Councillor Dukas's motion. If we just took the 3 names out, I would support it. But I just think we need to have something that the EPA is setting the conditions for this, and I think we need to be compliant with the EPA requirements. So I'd just like you to support the alternate motion. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Foster,
No,
next we have a point of
clarification. I'm not sure when they come in this.
Yeah, you can go now if you like.
Did you
Councillor Purcell, and then we'll go to Councillor Lockett.
Thank you.
There was just a point of clarification. So we're saying we will get an EPA accredited organisation to do the assessment.
Yes.
Which is what the company have done.
well,
So
I
would you
suppose,
be happy if we just got the company's report?
well, I presume Marshall Day, an accredited acoustician with the EPA. I'm not sure of that. So, but whether or not that's for GPG.
My understanding, and I stand corrected, is that a part of the planning conditions is that it has to be an EPA accredited wind turbine noise acoustic assessor. So the answer, maybe ask Ms Granger whether that's correct or not.
Ms Granger?
I'd need to take that one on notice. I can't answer whether Marshall Day are on that list.
Okay. So, point of clarification from Councillor Lockett.
Thank you,
also.
Mr Mayor. My point of clarification was regarding your motion about it said noise-sensitive properties. I'm just wondering how we're going to, make that concrete. It sounds, I'm concerned it's a little bit vague. Like, do we go a, 2-3 kilometre radius, or like, how do we tighten that up? Just noise-sensitive is
Yes,
subjective.
look, good question, and we've just passed a motion earlier regarding the Hawkesdale Wind Farm CEC. It may be the first thing on the agenda for the new Hawkesdale CEC to choose the properties. Look, fair comment, but yes, but I think it's only a problem if it can't be fixed. So, but I just think with the CEC being formed, it would be the first thing on the agenda. It would be a good motion for the CEC to take on board. The CEC are there supposedly representing the community, so I think it would be a great opportunity for the CEC to come up with the proposed wind sites.
Okay, before we go to Councillor Foster as a seconder, is there any further points of clarification or questions for Councillor Smith on his motion? Councillor Dugas?
In relation to the sensitive property, wouldn't we have to do it according to the permit conditions and do the same as what the wind farm has already done? Have like for like?
Well, thank you, Mr. Councillor Dukas. That's probably something that the CEC can work through. Yeah, look, I'm just trying to get a good.
It's up to the CEC
I'm just trying to
do
get a
that.
good. I'm just trying to get a good outcome for the community, and if we keep putting up roadblocks, we'll be here till midnight. But
Any further questions for Councillor Smith before we go on to the seconder? Thanks. Councillor Foster as a seconder?
No, I did second that motion, but I'm just taking on board Councillor Purcell's comments. Would it be a better, stronger motion to say, instead of EPA accredited, just to say an independent acoustician? Would that be acceptable? Because I do take your point, Councillor Purcell. And the intent, your intent is to assist.
yes, I don't think it really alters the intent, and if it means getting it through, so that would be replacing
EPA accredited.
by, the motion would read, conduct independent noise testing by an independent acoustician.
Yes.
Look, I'm happy with that, yes. But,
Okay. So that's the other
I'm just
motion
wondering whether it is an EPA,
Councillor Smith, we need to keep on cracking. What's your decision on the suggestion there?
no, I'd like to stick to my original alternate motion. I hear what Councillor Foster's saying, but
Okay, that's the decision. Thanks, Councillor Smith. So, Councillor Foster, as the seconder, are you speaking?
Look, I'd just like to say, I feel it's getting a bit convoluted, but I think most of us want to do the right thing by the community here. We just want to do the right thing. We want to do what we can do in our power, which is limited, which is seriously limited, unfortunately.
You could have voted for it.
Hang on, Councillor Dugas. Councillor Foster.
And my problem, the reason I guess I didn't vote for the earlier motion was because of the three names. I think that just does the exact opposite to what we're trying to do in terms of transparency. So I guess I think we should do something to support the community.
Thanks, Councillor Foster. Any other councillor speaking to the motion? Councillor Foster, Councillor Lockett, thanks.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I foreshadow a motion?
That is able to foreshadow a motion.
Thank you. That it is very similar to Councillor Smith's motion, where it's but remove the EPA and it's independent. Bit of a rabbit hole here. Bear with us.
Okay, that's foreshadowed.
Yep, thank you.
Mr Mayor, I'd be willing to, just to bring it to a vote, I would be willing to go with Councillor Foster's amended vote. I'm sorry, I respect Councillor Lockett's motion, and I think it's very similar to Councillor Foster, so I'm willing to go with that, that we alter the motion before you. Sorry, you might so you can get an idea of this.
So, Councillor Smith, could you read out the motion that you're going with now, thanks?
The Moyne Shire conduct independent noise testing by an independent acoustician at a number of noise-sensitive properties surrounding the proposed Hawkesdale wind farm, so that the community can verify the modelling which Marshall Day Acoustics has conducted for the proponent.
Now, does the seconder still second that motion?
I do.
Right. Thanks. Speaking to the motion, so Councillor Lockett was speaking to the motion. You withdraw that foreshadow?
Yes, yeah.
Would you like to speak to the current motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, we've heard there's obviously a heap of concerns about the Hawkesdale wind farm, about the acoustician and the testing. Agree with Councillor Dukes' comments that we don't have the report. That is really frustrating, and obviously I imagine extremely frustrating for the community. I think the CEC will play a really important role in working out what is that independence and getting this data, and hopefully it'll help down the track, but it'll help in the present time as well. So thank every councillor for going on this journey, and that's what we do as councillors. We are we've been elected to represent the community, and we are really trying to work with the community here. So, I appreciate everyone's, willingness to work with us. We're trying the best to do with what we can. We are limited, and it's really frustrating where the minister sits and we're begging, come on, listen to us. So, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Lockett. Any other councillor speaking to Councillor Smith's motion? Councillor Purcell.
Just coming out of what Councillor Lockett just said, who actually determines the independent? I know Councillor Lockett suggested it's the Community Engagement Committee. So the under that assumption, the Community Engagement Committee actually determines independence?
Mr Millard's happy to take that one.
Through you, Mayor, I'd suggest, Councillor Purcell, that the CEC might have input, absolutely, but it would be Council's determination on who that is.
Okay. And the second part of that is, look, I think it'd be worthwhile if we included Ryan's Corner in this. They're both the same company are doing it. It's close to towns, and I think it'd be worthwhile. If it's not a part of this motion, maybe I need to foreshadow a motion that we include Ryan's Corner as well.
Woolsthorpe.
And maybe Woolsthorpe.
Willerton.
Have another look at Willerton, MacArthur again.
We need to do all of them.
Hang on, Councillor Purcell's got the floor.
So they were the only two issues that I'll foreshadow a motion that or if we can't, no, because we'd have to lose this one. Maybe it needs to be a councillor motion for the next meeting. That we include all wind farms.
Thanks, Councillor Purcell. Any further councillors wishing to speak on this Councillor Smith's motion? Councillor Dukas.
Could someone give me a quick indication of what independence means? Does that mean that they can have worked for wind farms in the past, maybe done 2 or 3 tests, maybe peer reviewed some of the testing that's done? Would that still claim independence in that regard?
Who are you asking the question of?
I'm asking you. What's your opinion of independent?
I'd be guided by the definition of independence.
Mr Mayor, Councillor Dukas should be the one to answer that, because it's in your motion to engage the service of an independent suitably qualified acoustician. That
I
is
will.
in your motion, so
Thank you.
you should be able to tell us.
Thanks, Councillor Smith.
I will tell you.
Councillor Smith, Councillor Dukas has the floor. Can you please speak
can I
for
answer-
or against the
Can I
motion?
answer, Councillor Smith?
Well, you can do that when you've got
Okay.
the floor.
So, the word independence, I believe, should be scrutinised. I don't believe a company that's done noise testing for a wind farm on 2 or 3 occasions, or a company that's peer-reviewed their friend's work on 2 or 3 occasions, could be determined as independent. I think those companies that have already declared their hand as being conflicted couldn't be deemed as independent. The reason you have 3 names in here is because they're the only ones that have done no work for the wind farms. And I would highlight the fact that Mr. Stephen Cooper is well renowned when it comes to noise. I mean, that guy is highly sought over all around the world, especially he's worked a lot of times for the American government in, I don't know if it was the Army or the Navy, but one of those organisations. I mean, that guy knows his stuff, and if you want quality and independent, not saying the other people are less, but the reason they're there is because they're independents. They haven't peer reviewed, unless they've worked for a private enterprise, like Mr. someone or other might ring up and say, look, I want you to do private noise testing for me, so I can find out exactly what's going on, because I don't believe the wind farm's telling the truth. So that's what they've done, these 3 people. So if the CEC committee can determine who they believe is independent, then that'll come down through to the council, and the councillors will make the final decision. If that's the method it's going to work with, I think I could just about drag myself across the line and support this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Dukas. Any other
But I'll be
councillors
watching
speaking to
closely.
Councillor Smith's motion? Nothing further?
I'd like to speak against it,
Councillor, speaking to the motion, Councillor Gleeson.
against the motion.
Change my mind.
I would love to support this, and I have that much empathy for each of the communities that are affected by it. But for the last 45 days that I've sat in the chair, all I've copped is, you must do this, you must do that. And I'm offended by it. All our presenters have come here today and says, this is your fault and you should pay. If the community group had to come in and said, we'll go to halves, we'll put in, you know, we'll have a serious buy-in in this because we are affected by it, I would have no problem in saying, let's go at it. No problem at all. But I can't support the motion, as I've explained reasons before. I've got a lot of notes here, but I'm speaking against the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Gleeson. Any other councillors? I'll speak then. I'll speak against this motion. I think it's not much different from the last motion from Councillor Dukas, so for the same reasons. Back to Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in summing up, look, I think I respected Councillor Dukas's motion coming up. We're all wanting to try and do something for Hawkesdale and have their voices heard. I think the only thing where we've stumbled is the use of the 3 names that were put forward. So, look, I think this is a sensible outcome that reflects the views of the Hawkesdale community, and it will get the desired result. So, look, I'd just like you to support the alternate motion. Thank you. And I respect the Councillor Gleeson and Councillors Mead's views against the motion. I respect what you have to say regarding that, but this is what we're here. As you say, Councillor Gleeson, we're here to make decisions, and I respect your views for making a decision.
Okay, councillors, time to vote. All those in favour of Councillor Smith's motion?
With independence.
Councillor Smith, Councillor Foster, Councillor Lockett, Councillor Dukas in favour. Those against? Councillor Mead, Councillor Purcell and Councillor Gleeson against. The motion has passed. Thank you. It is dealt with. We will move now back to item 1, the financial report. Thanks for those who attended today. Mr. Ledden will find his seat to present the monthly financial performance report.
Probably up to number 1 already.
This is next year's.
Thanks, Mr. Ledden.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors. This is our finance report for the 5 months of the current financial year, so from 1 July around to 30 November. What the report tells us is we're tracking probably a bit similar, to previous months. Our operational revenues, main COVID impact will be caravan parks, as we previously discussed, although we have really strong bookings over the summer period, so some of that might level out. We've been impacted on our returns on investments, unsurprisingly, given when you look at the investment rates that we receive on our investment portfolio. Our capital works program, we had an original budget of $18 million with carry forwards and additional grants and fundings that we've been successful in achieving. We're now targeting a $28 million capital spend, which is probably the highest ever capital work spend that the Shire's undertaken. So that's ambitious, but it's pleasing to report that at the 5-month mark, we've already expended $9 million towards that program. At the same time last year, it was a spend of $4.9 million at the 5-month mark. So a lot of big projects that are progressing well. Port Fairy Bowls Club is down to, I think, the final straight with $500,000 to spend. We've been successful with the Garbock Hall announcement, so that'll be a $600,000 project as well. $6 million in roads, rehab and reshedding to be undertaken in the next 6 months. So last year we expended around $20 million, so we'd be in advance of that. So all in all, our balance sheet and our financial ratios remain strong at this point in time, given the level of cash we've got and unspent capital works. But happy to take questions, Mayor. But the recommendation is that the council receive the financial report, and there is the one variation that's listed within that report.
Questions for Mr. Ledden, Councillor Purcell?
I'm happy to move that. If Mr. Ledden would take us through the variations to in attachment 4.
We'll just leave it open for questions at the moment, but questions on the variations. Thanks, Mr. Ledden.
Thank you, Mayor, and I should have mentioned it, and I'm just trying to find it. It's $30,000, and it's for the bicycle strategy. Thank you, Councillor Dukas.
See, I do read it.
Sorry, on page 14, Councillor Purcell, which is the Port Fairy Bicycle Strategy. So funding received from the Transport Accident Commission. So 30,000 in, 30,000 out. So net nil cost to council.
Councillor Dukas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is about the bicycle strategy. First one off the rank. 30,000 sounds terrific. Does it all have to be spent on a strategy? Because we've done strategies to death in Port Fairy on bikes. There's bicycle groups in Port Fairy everywhere, seniors, juniors, all that. They all know what's needed. We've had a presentation from, Trev, help me out here, mate, some bicycle mob.
Port Fairy Bicycle Users Group.
That's them, and they seem to know what they're talking about. So do we have to actually go and find a consultant and spend 30 grand, or can we do most of it in-house and spend 20 or 25 on maybe line marking and stenciling bike paths and that?
Through you, Mayor, take that on notice. It'll depend on the funding agreement and what the expenditure has to be on. But if there was capacity to do some strategic work plus some on-ground work, we could organise that through the funding agreement. But it will just depend on the terms of the funding agreement. So I'll have to go back and have a look at that.
Thanks, Mr. Greenberg.
Yeah, no, terrific. If we could do that, that'd be great, because speaking to a few of them yesterday, I should say, I wasn't cornered, but they found me, and yeah, their concern is, look, we've done it to death, we know what we need, we've had experts look at it. I think the bicycle was it Rail Trails Victoria? Someone was in Port Fairy over the weekend who's head of Bicycles Victoria or Rail Trails, something or other, anyway. And he said it's terrific. All you need to do is X, Y, and Z, and it'll be state of the art. So if you could check that out, it'd be great, Mr. Greenberger. Thank you.
Any further question for Mr. Ledden on the finance report? Councillor
Yes,
Smith.
thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a quick question to Mr Ledden. Page 7 of 38 on statutory and discretionary reserves. Just a query that's been brought up, I'm asking on behalf. The waste facility reserve, it's quite a large amount of money, over $3 million. Just the question is, how is that raised and what is the purpose of the reserve, please? It's a large amount of money, and how's it raised and its potential end use?
Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Smith. So the funds for the reserve come in via the waste charges as part of our rates and charges on the rates notice. And then the liabilities of that reserve are established by Mr Greenberger and his team. The major liability at the moment is the rehabilitation of the Badhams Lane tip site, but there's also other capital investments in the waste services area. Here, and an example is the recent purchase of the new street sweeper, for instance. But I don't know if Mr Greenberger wants to add any more to that.
The only thing I'd add, Mayor, is that the waste reserve is to be used for the purpose of collecting and disposing of waste, not for other reasons. There were some councils that were looked at previously by various officials in relation to how they use that waste reserve, because they were using it for things other than waste collection and disposal. But I can assure you that Moyne Shire only uses the reserve for things associated with waste collection and disposal. So we'll continue to work with that. And as Director Ledden said, we've got a liability as the Killarney landfill that we'll have to reinstate at some stage when that's out of capacity. But the other thing that's currently unknown is the future of the East Beach tip site and what council's involvement may need to be with that.
Thank you. Mr Ledden, I have a question on page 37 of 38 about the Mortlake Industrial Land Study and where that is up to. I understand that there is potential for people keen to invest in Mortlake, and this is dependent on that study. Mr Ledden.
Thanks, Mayor. Probably defer to Director Davis.
Mr Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. The study's been expanded to include Koroit as a result of previous work we'd been undertaking on the Koroit structure plan, as the previous council will be aware. So it has commenced under that banner, with the first snapshot being for Koroit. There's a journaling to occur that needs to be accredited across money expended into that account, and the Mortlake component will be beginning in the new year, in 2021.
Thanks, Mr Davis. Any further questions? I'll seek a mover, please.
No, couple more, please.
Councillor Dugas.
Mr Greenberger, the waste infrastructure upgrade. Did you find out what that was all about?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, the waste infrastructure upgrade is actually a caravan park project that was carried forward from last year. So it was to do with works at both the Gardens and Southern Caravan Park, mainly bin enclosures that weren't completed last financial year. Funds were carried forward to this financial year, and I understand that the works are now complete.
Right, thank you.
Another one, Councillor Dugas.
Yeah, what do they call it? The Coastal Reserve minor structure maintenance, the money came out of that to go to the causeway. Can you tell me, it doesn't say how much it's got 20,000 for, it talks about the causeway, is that 20,000 out of that program or 20,000 out of a pool of 50 or 80 or something?
So through you, Mayor, the total budget for minor structures, coastal structure maintenance is $50,000. So $20,000 that has been earmarked to assist with the causeway project, because that is a coastal structure. But there's $30,000 remaining for other things that need to happen this financial year.
Thank you.
I'll seek a mover now.
Seek a mover.
Councillor Purcell's moved, seconded by Councillor Lockett. Councillor Purcell.
Look, just to say that it's a good, strong position. I think the previous council and the staff deserve a pat on the back for keeping the council in such a position, and hopefully we continue to do so.
Thanks, Councillor Lockett. Councillor Purcell. Councillor Lockett, over to you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Great to see that the Capital Works rolling out on schedule and a few very exciting projects underway, and we're in an excellent financial position. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Anyone else speak to the motion? All those in favour? Motion's carried 7-0. Item 2, Koroit Rail Trail land parcel, presented by Mr Ledden, the Director of Community and Corporate Services.
Thank you, Mayor. So, councillors, this report, in essence, recommends that council become the community management for those pieces of community assets, if you like, being the playground and the fitness area at the end of the Koroit Rail Trail. So, it's probably fallen in a bit of a gap. Council effectively assumes control by did make a financial contribution to these assets, but it's important they be then brought under appropriate public liability cover as part of this process. So probably happy to take questions, Mayor, but that's in essence what this report is about, and the recommendation is that the council proceed with the process to become the community management for those parcels.
Thanks, Mr Ledden. Any questions? Councillor Gleeson.
Yeah, Mr Ledden, I was just through you, Daniel. You know, would it be beyond the realms of the current setup to take on that public liability? As in, could we just pass on the assets to the current committee of management?
Through you, Mayor, of that being the rail trail?
Yeah, or whoever it is.
Yeah, so the rail trail aren't incorporated, so they don't have insurance, further to your previous inquiry. So I think in essence that's why this is the most practical outcome.
Councillor Purcell.
Just to follow on from that, so if there's an accident on the rail trail, the rail trail committee are responsible and may be liable for that?
Through you, Mayor, I'll take that on notice, but my guess is that it would be the department, but I'm unsure of the exact status of the land, presuming it's Crown land.
Okay.
Thanks.
Just follow on from
Yep,
that.
Councillor Purcell.
So why doesn't this fall under the department then?
I think in essence because council's made a contribution but also is maintaining it as their asset.
Right, okay.
Any further questions? Or I'll seek a mover, please.
Yeah.
Councillor Dukas has moved, seconded by Councillor Smith. Councillor Dukas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I won't say it's procedural, but it's something that we need to do to protect the community in case something goes wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, we'll be responsible for the playground and any upgrades to it. Can't expect Lions Club or any other charity like that around the community to keep funding and upgrading things or replacing them. They do a great job as it is. So it falls in line with other things that we take committee of management of. So merely a procedural matter.
Thanks, Councillor Dukas. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Further what Councillor Dukas says, it just mainly for the insurance, and having a drive past it the other day, it's a fantastic looking asset on the northern side of Koroit, so very keen to support this. Very impressive,
isn't it?
Very impressive.
Any other councillor wishing to speak to the motion? Councillor Dugas, do you need to summarise?
No need.
All right, councillors, will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour of item 2? Motion's carried 7-0. Item 3, Brolga Assessment and Mitigation Standards, presented by the Director of Economic Development and Planning. Actually, it's presented by Ms Granger, who's the Major Projects Officer.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So DELP have released new standards for consultation for Brolga standards for wind turbines. The standard recognises that Brolga is a threatened species, and the new standards seek to ensure that they do not become more threatened. It prohibits wind farms in mapped flocking areas and incorporates a 900-metre buffer from wetlands used or suitable for breeding purposes. And when they've defined a wind farm, they've defined it as it's a really inclusive definition, so it includes quarries, it includes roads, includes fences, includes transmission lines. There's a draft submission attached to this report. It puts our current position to oppose new wind farms in Moyne. It outlines what activity we've got. It seeks that the standards should have further monitoring built into them. The standards very much devised just for the permit assessment phase rather than the operational phase of a wind farm. It seeks some model conditions. It expresses concern at the length of the transition time built into the planning scheme amendment, which is attached to the guidelines. So it means some of the permits that are currently, or applications that are currently on the books, wouldn't be subject to these new standards and the new information. And it identifies that any request for an extension of permit should have regard to the new standards, or the minister should have regard to those standards when extending a permit. Additionally, we express concern regarding the lack of any active engagement that was undertaken with our community.
Thanks, Ms Granger. Any questions before we seek a mover? Okay, a mover, please. Councillor Foster's moved. Councillor Purcell seconded. Councillor Foster.
Look, I think it's all there. You've heard Ms Granger. I think it's important that council has this input, and I just seek support from my fellow councillors.
Thanks, Councillor Foster. Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I agree with the mover. Look, the key issues that are raised in regard to consultation and many of the others are certainly deserving of a submission and should be included, and including some of the details that are included there from Ms Granger, and more than happy to second this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Purcell. Any other councillors speaking for or against the motion? Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll speak in favour of the motion. As I mentioned earlier today, one of the documents as Mr Millard read out, really encourage them to have their say and their input through DELP. That's who our report's going to, and our recommendations, suggestions. One of the difficult things with renewable energy and wind farms in general is birds and bats are going to die. Natural vegetation will be reduced, but at what cost? Do we want a coal plant in Moyne? Do we want a nuclear power plant? I think we have to weigh these things up. Clearly we don't. we don't want those things.
Of course we do.
Everyone wants their phones to charge and wants their lights on at night. Moyne is definitely taking our fair share, more than our fair share. And this is, one of the ways we're trying to minimise the impact on the Barolgas. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any other councillor speaking to the motion?
Yeah.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, look, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'd like to support the motion. Barolgas are a threatened species, highly impacted by wind farm developments, and I think it's a good opportunity both for the Shire to have an input, and any community members can have an input into this upcoming legislation. So I'd again like to support the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Any other councillor speaking to the motion?
Mr Mayor, I'll speak against the motion.
Councillor Dugas.
If you took notice of what Mr Hamish Cummings said, and he, along with others that have an interest in Barolgas, etc., and look at our report, they're chalk and cheese, so we can't both be right. Our submission does not address the issues that Mr Cummings has highlighted. I mean, all this new legislation is going to do, or new assessment and mitigation standard, it's going to kill more birds than it's going to save. And we, the council, should be looking after the Barolgas and our community that look after the Barolgas, not supplement a wind farm doctrine. That's all it is. I reckon the government got the wind farms in to write this up for them, because it does nothing about protection, nothing at all. And to highlight a point, Seine Line land, it says that it has no relevance at all, yet there's hundreds and hundreds of documents where Barolgas forage, nest and live in Seine Line water and land. So really, where's the truth in all this? We're either concerned about the Barolgas and honestly concerned, or we just go with the flow, because this will give wind farms carte blanche to build wherever they like. I know it says you can't build within a wetland, but by geez, you can build anywhere around it, and 900 metre buffer, which sounds a long way, but if you've got 150 turbines and they're all within 900 metres of a wetland, there's no way out for those birds at all. So it's really give the wind farm companies the right to do whatever they like. To hell with the birds. So I will definitely not be supporting our submission. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dugas. Any other councillors? Back to Councillor Foster as a mover.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would just like to say, pointing out the comment that Ms Granger made in her report that there is disappointment at the lack of consultation and engagement, and this is our chance to at least have a say about that. I have no reason to think that the advice that we've been provided here by our professional staff is incorrect in any way, so I'm quite happy to support this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Foster. We'll put the motion to the vote now. All those in favour of item 3? Councillor Smith, Foster, Lockett, Mead, Purcell and Gleeson in favour. Councillor Dugas, those
Definitely
voting
not.
against?
Yeah.
Councillor Dugas is voting against.
You
Item
will
4,
do the italics.
Moyne Business Facade Improvement Program, presented by the Director of Economic Development and Planning, Mr Brett Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. The Moyne Business Facade Improvement Program was launched in October this year with 30 applications received from businesses across the Shire. Due to an overwhelming response, the fund's been oversubscribed by approximately $45,000. A review of the applications has been undertaken against evaluation criteria that is attached for your information to award funding to 14 businesses. The recommendation is that Council allocate the total of $51,541 to the improvement program as presented in attachment 2. A little bit of background about the scheme. Program grants are matched on a one-to-one basis by Council up to a maximum of $5,000 per facade. It aligns with Moyne's economic development strategy around place improvement. The program has attracted significant interest across the Shire. Turning to the graph at figure 1, where we had 15 applications in Port Fairy, 7 in Mortlake, 5 in Koroit and so on. So there was a reasonable spread across the Shire. Would we have liked more? Of course we would, but at the same time, with the first pass of this project, this scheme, I think it's a very good result. The total value of funding requested from all applications is at $99,918, and the estimated cost of all those projects is valued at $244,000, so great reinvestment into our businesses within the Shire. A total of 28 applicants have met the eligibility criteria. One application has been considered ineligible based on the type of work proposed, which was asphalt and road resurfacing, and another is assessed as incomplete based on limited or very little detail on its application. Therefore, the total value of funding requested is in excess of $90,000. Important to note also that any relevant planning permit applications are also eligible for a fee reduction as a part of the small business incentive schemes, and that has been taken up by a number of the proposals, should they be successful. The financial implication is that essentially Council has allocated its $50,000 for the program in its first year. This allows Council to support 14 of the 30 applications that scored in the 90 to 100 percentile with a minor overrun. If Council wishes to support all 28 eligible applications, a budget variation would be required to an additional amount of $40,418.
Any questions for Mr Davis? Okay, I'll seek a mover of a motion. Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wish to move an alternative motion, which Mr Davies kind of touched on just at the end there. Is that okay to read it out?
Yeah.
That Council support and fund all eligible applications and allocate $90,418, including a budget variation of $40,418 to the Business Facade Improvement Program.
We have a seconder for that motion. Councillor Dugas, seconded. Councillor Lockett, you can go ahead and speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Fantastic program and really great to see the timing, well, the timing of the pandemic was horrendous, it always is, but the timing of the economic development team to adapt and overcome and really support council with this great initiative has been phenomenal, and I think the response from the community has been phenomenal and overwhelming in a great way. Businesses have, been struggling with the whole COVID situation, which is, has been changing kind of weekly, and then to go, right, we're going to do Appo Shop as well. Like, what a fantastic community to really rally around this program. Really exciting to see, and will be exciting to see, shop fronts get a bit of a lift and a bit of a coat of paint, or adapting to the new kind of COVID normal. Also great to see stimulus spending to really help our economy kick along, and everyone to support local. Obviously, the support local program as well. I think the way the Shire's adapted to the COVID situation has been phenomenal, and this is another excellent example of that. I really seek the support of other councillors to support this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Lockett. Councillor Dukas?
Reserve my right, Mr. Mayor.
Other councillors wishing to speak on the motion?
Just endorse,
Councillor Gleeson, would you like to speak?
Mr. Mayor, sorry, just endorse Jordan's comments. I think it's a fantastic initiative, and it should be something that we continue.
Thanks very much. Councillor Foster?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think economic development is one of our very crucial roles that we have to play, and this entire program has been so well received. It's done exactly what it's meant to do, which is to generate some stimulus, to get people feeling a bit better, to really give our business community a bit of a lift and a boost at a really tough time. So I'm very happy to support this motion to extend it, and maybe even, who knows, down the track even further.
Thanks, Councillor Foster. Other councillors speaking to the motion? Before we go back to the mover, I'll speak to the motion in support. I think this is a genuine, real, tangible, positive difference that we can make in our local community, our local business community, supporting our small businesses. This is not a study, it's not an investigation, it's actually timber and nails and bricks and mortar to improve the presentation of our streets, improve the presentation of our small business. And hopefully, who knows, might result in increased traffic for them. So this is a fantastic program. The first one, so I think it makes sense that we support all those applications up to the value of 90,418, which is almost tripled by the time it's been constructed within the community. It's a massive economic boost. Local tradies will be the focus of use. It'll be a big morale boost and support of our local business, and a genuine positive difference. So I definitely support the full funding. Back to Councillor Lockett as the mover. Councillor Dukas as the mover.
Hello there.
Councillor Dukas as a reserver.
As a reserver, look, thank you. A great initiative. I can't remember where it came from, but a great initiative. Something was tried, I believe, in Croydon years ago with Robert, someone or other, with his purple and pink trousers and all that.
Gilbert.
I got the bear bit right. Anyway, it was taken up a little bit, but that was limited to, I think, painting and upgrading sort of stuff. But this is a facade improvement, and you can tell by the number of people that have put in for it, first up, how successful it's going to be. So I believe that a wise council will put the same amount of funding in next budget, and even though we might have as many applicants, because we've got so many this time, it'll be a great ongoing thing till all our towns are spruced up and looking pretty. And with the sea change coming and the hinterland being a lot better to live in these days, who knows how high the population of the Moyne Shire will grow. All being good ratepayers. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dukas. I apologise for missing your right of reserve there. Back to Councillor Lockett as the mover.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well surmised by my esteemed colleagues. Yeah, really exciting program. Looking forward to everyone, having their Christmas gifts coming. Nails and bricks and mortar. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, councillors, we'll vote on the motion that's been put by Councillor Lockett, which is the full funding, 90,418. All those in favour? Motion's carried 7-0. Item 5 has been dealt with. Item 6, policy review, works profit margin. Mr. Greenberger is not available at the moment. All right, we'll come back to item 6. Item 7, project variations. Mr. Greenberger.
Sorry, he was out of the room with a conflict.
You'd be slow getting back in. Yes, we're up to item 6. Mr Greenberger, policy review, works profit margin. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This report's to do with the works profit margin policy. It's due for its 4-year review. We've reviewed it. We don't think there's any need for any substantial change. We believe that the 10% minimum profit margin is still appropriate, except for the larger projects where the policy allows for some flexibility to change that depending on the size of the project. So we're presenting it tonight for endorsement by Council.
Thanks, Mr Greenberg. Any questions? Second mover, please. Councillor Dugas has moved. Second to Councillor Smith. Councillor Dugas.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Straightforward policy review, profit margin. I have one question, and it might be a bit difficult to answer, Mr Greenberger. In this type of work, what would be in private enterprise the profit margin? Do you know the companies work on?
Through you, Mayor, no, I wouldn't have a clue. But I know they do vary depending on the volume of work that they have versus the costs and where they get their supplies from, so it will vary from company to company.
Right. Personally, it seems a bit low, that's all.
Anything else?
10%, it doesn't allow for much leeway. And, I mean, if we're going to go with a low profit margin, are we forcing private enterprise out that need to make a 7 or 8% just to keep the doors open? So, I don't know, other councillors might have a different idea or might know more than me. It's just a thought I'd have, that let's not squeeze out the private enterprise with a low profit.
Councillor Dugas, you're speaking.
So no, that was my clarification. So I'm willing to support the recommendation as it stands.
Right.
I just thought I'd make that known. Maybe someone would like to change it. Who knows?
So are you still speaking to the motion?
Yeah, spoken to the
okay,
motion.
Thanks very much. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Nothing much more to add. This policy's overdue, so I think it's about time we get it passed, and the 10% seems a fairly responsible amount, so I'm happy to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors speak to the motion?
Can I have a question to Kev? To Director, if I could.
Greenberger.
Mr Greenberger, the amount of work that we win that we actually tender for, what sort of percentage would that be? Because that'll give us an idea of whether the 10% is too high or too low.
It varies from year to year, depending on the particularly Regional Roads Victoria and the volume of work they have in the area. Probably in the last sort of 3 to 4 years, we probably bat about 50%, so we win about half of what we apply for. Hopefully that will improve in future years, but certainly we've also got to think about the capacity of what our work teams can actually deliver as well. So we are a bit careful about how many we put in for, because if we won them all, we have to make sure that we can actually deliver the projects.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, considering that, I think the 10% is probably reasonable. It is probably lower than what private enterprise would go for, but I do believe that our assessment of projects is probably a bit more thorough than what a lot of people in private enterprise, because we've got the team to work out the actual costs of probably in more detail than they have in a lot of degrees. And if we win that sort of percentage, it means we also lose that sort of, we win half, we lose half. So it's probably in the right ballpark, so I'll be supporting it.
Thanks, Councillor Purcell. We'll go back to the mover, Councillor Dugas.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Straightforward. I think, if memory serves me correct, years ago we had two profit margins, one for general works and one for Vic Roads back in those days. And we slugged them a bit more because when we do their work, they are difficult to get on with, and two, if something goes wrong, we cop the blame even though we're working for them. So it should, it should have been an insult profit instigated into it. Having said that, it's a straightforward recommendation, and let's hope that we can actually make a profit.
Thanks, Councillor Dugas. All voting now on item 6, please. Those in favour? Motion's carried 7-0. Item 8, project variations for the 2020-2021 financial year. Item 7. Mr Greenberger, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. At the start of this budget year, we had 3 projects that were all reliant on grant funding for them to proceed. Those being Macarthur Recreation Space, Panmure Netball Change Rooms, and the Port Fairy Skate Park investigation. This report proposes that we actually change projects around from future year to this year for 2 main reasons. One is so we're not carrying funding forward into the next financial year, but also to expend the funding that we have in this year's budget, and also to try to create a stimulus within the economy. So the recommendation tonight is that we remove the Macarthur Recreation Space and Panmure Netball Change Rooms from this year's budget, but add the Port Fairy Skate Park $20,000, Hawkesdale Apex Park for $60,000, and the Martins Point Playground in Port Fairy for $100,000. And part 2 of the recommendation is we defer the removed projects, being Macarthur and Panmure, to the 21-22 budget process. Happy to take questions, Mayor.
Any questions for Mr Greenberger? Right, second mover, please. Councillor Dukas has moved, seconded by Councillor Foster. Councillor Dukas.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A good outcome considering the number of projects we're looking at. It'd be nice to get Macarthur Rec up and the Panmure change rooms, but they're not dead in the water. They're just transferred to the next budget year. It's all about grant funding and communities' contribution, etc. I hope that next year we'll be able to undertake those projects. Those projects earmarked, the skate park investigation, well, I could have told you 18 years ago it was in the wrong spot, but anyway, that's 18 years ago. Hawkesdale Apex Park would be terrific. Something for those free campers to get a free... Can we put a slot machine at the playground to get something out of them? And Martins Point, as we've seen in our walk around, is definitely in need of an upgrade. So a good outcome all round, although there are some people might think they're losing. They're only temporarily on standby until next year, and I hope that everything comes to fruition. So well done to all concerned. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dugas. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor. I just feel that it's great to keep the wheels moving. This is, it's really encouraging to see, and as Councillor Dukas has pointed out, the Macarthur and Panmure projects are just being deferred. They're not off the books, so really happy to support this.
Thanks, Councillor Foster. Any other councillors? Back to Councillor Dukas as the mover.
No need, Mr Mayor.
Okay, councillors, all those in favour of item 7? Motion's carried 7-0. Now we're up to item 8, Port Fairy Yacht Club petition. Mr Greenberger.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This report is in relation to a petition signed by 371 signatories seeking immediate action from Council in progressing the lease process for the Port Fairy Yacht Club. Council's governance rules require a petition to be laid on the table for at least a month before any action is taken, unless it's deemed urgent. In this matter, what we believe is the most appropriate course of action is to include the petition as part of the submission process for the Port Fairy Yacht Club lease, which we talked about at the last council meeting. I also might add that submission process will commence on the 9th of January next year. We've got the documentation being prepared, and we wanted to hold off over the Christmas break because we didn't want to hold anyone up and prevent them from making a submission. So that period will commence for 28 days from the 9th of January, and you'll probably get a report in March or April in relation to the outcome of that process. Happy to take questions, Mayor.
Any questions for Mr Greenberger? I'll seek a mover, please. Councillor Smith's moved, seconded Councillor Foster. Councillor Smith.
I'd just like to move that the council table the petition. Thank you. Receive the petition.
Yes, to second that, and look forward to the public consultation process.
Anything further from any councillor? Councillor Dugas.
Thank you. The heading of the petition.
Yes, Councillor Dugas. So if you look at the attachment, that actually has the introduction to the petition as part of that attachment.
Peter Ritchie's letter?
No, it's prior. If you have a look at, say, page 6 of 21, oh, you may have it differently, but there's an introduction that says, to the Moyne Shire Council, petition of Port Fairy Yacht Club, etc., etc., and then has the signatories below.
Sorry. I don't have that. I don't have a 6 of, would you say 6 of 21?
I'll try to help you, Councillor Dugas. That one.
That one?
Yeah.
Oh, that, yeah, I read that. That doesn't sort of seem like a heading on a petition, that would. Anyway, that's irrelevant. We've got the petition. I don't know.
We receive it and move on.
Yeah, move on. Have we got to move it?
Yes,
Yeah.
we're into that. No
Go on,
worries.
yeah, Mr.
Any,
Councillor Smith.
any other councillors speaking to the motion? Councillor Smith to summarise.
Nothing further to...
Councillors,
please.
all those in favour of item 8? Motion's carried, 7-0. Item 9 is the CEO Performance and Remuneration Advisory Committee report. Mr Millard steps out of the room with a conflict of interest, so we'll ask Mr Ledden to introduce this, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So, councillors, this item is recommending that council approve the minutes of the CEO Performance and Remuneration Committee, which met on the 1st of December, of which the full council are members of that committee. So there were 3 components being recommendations in that meeting, one regarding the remuneration of the CEO, one setting the performance plan of the CEO for the next year, and one regarding the independent support for council in monitoring the performance of the CEO. So that is the recommendation is that council approve the minutes of that committee meeting.
Thanks. Before I ask you questions, just if there are any questions, just remind of the confidential nature of the details. If there are any questions, firstly. Okay, we'll seek a mover.
No, I've got a question.
Councillor Dugas.
Item 5, about seeking a facilitator. Has any progress been made on that?
Through you, Mayor, not that I'm aware of, but probably once this is endorsed, that will set the trigger. We'll, as mentioned, the committee meeting will go to market.
Okay, thank you.
And the motion is this: that council approve the minutes of the CEO Performance and Remuneration Advisory Committee of 1st of December 2020.
Correct.
Have a mover for that motion. Councillor Foster's moved it. Councillor Gleeson the second. Councillor Foster.
No, nothing to add.
Thanks. Councillor Gleeson.
No, same.
Any other councillor? Councillor Foster? No, all good. All those in favour? Motion's carried. All those in favour?
The minutes have the remuneration review and the increase in income in it?
Mr Ledden?
Through Mayor, correct. So there were 3 recommendations contained in those committee minutes. First one regarding the remuneration increase, second one on the performance plan, third one on the independent support.
So all those in favour? Motion is carried 7-0. We've got Mr Millard back. Thanks. Mayor and Council's report. Have any councillors got any questions to any other councillor or myself on any of those meetings? No? Move on. Item 11, councillor notice of motion. Councillor Foster, replacement of Christian prayer with non-denominational affirmation. Councillor Foster.
So the motion that I have put forward here is that council remove the Christian prayer from its formal meeting agenda, replacing it with a non-denominational, hard to say at this time of the day, affirmation, something along the lines of, as councillors of Moyne Shire, we pledge to carry out our duties with diligence and integrity, making fair decisions that are in the best interests of our community.
Thanks. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Lockett has seconded. Any clarifications? So Councillor Foster? Okay, you're welcome to speak on the motion.
Thank you. So I just feel that it's timely and appropriate at the end of 2020 that we replace the prayer with a non-denominational affirmation. I do acknowledge that this is a really important tradition, and I don't mean to diminish its meaning to anyone here, but it's a tradition that doesn't serve us anymore because it's one that at least a third of our community can't find their way into. I think that we need to have that quiet moment of reflection before we launch into council business. But this isn't a religious meeting. This is local government, and I believe the two don't mix. So I'm proposing that we begin our meetings with a pledge to do the work that we're elected to do, and that's to carry out our duties with diligence and integrity and make fair decisions that are in the best interests of all of our community. So councillors, I want to stress this is not a vote against Christianity or a vote against religion at all. Quite the contrary. It's a vote for tolerance and acceptance and respect, all of which are very Christian values. So, our role here is to foster inclusion and participation for all of our community and all of our residents wherever we can. And this is our opportunity to say to every person who lives here, every person who visits and works here, that you're welcome and that we are a tolerant, respectful and progressive community. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Foster. Councillor Lockett as a seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll reserve my right.
Thanks. Any other councillors speaking on the motion? Any other councillors speaking on the motion? No?
Who's going first?
Oh, no, I'm just going to speak against it.
No, when
Yeah,
I
that's
say any
what I'm saying,
councillor speaking on the motion, you can speak against it or for it. So,
Oh,
Councillor
yes,
Gleeson.
yeah, no,
Yep.
Look, I know it's a personal thing, and I appreciate everything that Karen said, and it all makes sense. And it does make sense. So I accept that. But I'm very proud of my great-great-great-grandfather who came here in 1854, and I'm particularly proud of his Irish Catholic background, on which we, promote our district very significantly through Shire of Belfast and all those other things. But it's meaningful to me because it's just something that was very, very important to my parents, and for that reason I'd like it to stay.
Thanks, Councillor Gleeson. Councillor Dugas.
Thank you. Yeah, speak against it. I think it's very important that we do have the prayer. To me, as Councillor Foster said, it's a Christian thing, and we live in a Christian society, whether we believe we're Christians or not, or whether we don't believe in God, or whether we don't have any religious feelings in our bones. I mean, we're sitting in Australia in a great place. We're Western, we're democratic, we're brought up with Christian values. I mean, this is just the start. Do we replace the prayer? Do we do the Daniel Andrews and put a ban on Australia Day? Where's it all lead? Do we want to end up like the Chinese? I don't think so. You don't see any prayers in North Korea. Who'd like to live there? And it all goes back to Christianity. You can dress it up any way you like, but Christianity is the base of Australia and their fundamentals. And I think all we can do to support what our forefathers has done is say a small prayer before the meeting. I know, and I've read what Councillor Foster says here, but sometimes our conscience needs a little bit of a prick. Instead of being vindictive or sultry or antagonising, maybe just a little prick in the mind saying, no, I'm going to do the right thing here, I'm going to do the good Christian thing and vote impartially or support the people that need this or help out that community group because they've got washed out in the flood. So I think by starting the meeting with a prayer is the best way to go. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Dugas. Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be voting against the motion, not because I disagree with it, but I just think, for a couple of reasons. One, I must admit the first time I ever went to a council meeting, I was surprised that they did have a prayer, because I was a little bit like you. But I think I've probably mellowed a bit over that journey, and the main reason I'll be voting against it is because both of our levels of government above us all start with a prayer. And I think it's reasonable that all levels of government should have the same philosophy. And until they change their decision to start with a prayer, I'll be supporting it in local government.
Thanks, Councillor Purcell. Any other councillor? Councillor Smith.
Yeah, look, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just wondering, to accommodate Councillor Foster's motion, could we include it as well as the prayer? Because I respect what Councillor Foster has moved forward, but I also respect our Christian beliefs. So it might be a bit wishy-washy, but it's only a second to read it out, and we're accommodating Councillor Foster's views as well as retaining the prayer. And I was just wondering whether there was any appetite for us to look at that. So, look, I would be voting against it, but just out of respect to the mover and the seconder of the motion, and it's only a very short statement, and I'm just wondering, would there be any capacity that we could include it and retain the prayer?
Councillor Foster, you've had a request by Councillor Smith to make an amendment. Are you interested in that amendment at all, which would be to add this non-denominational affirmation to the agenda.
I thank Councillor Smith for seeking to accommodate that, but I think my intent is to actually not begin with a prayer at all, because I feel, as I've explained, that it really does disenfranchise a whole lot of people. So
Okay.
Thank you anyway.
Thanks. So, Councillor Smith, that's the answer to that request. For me, before we go back to Councillor Lockett and Foster, I'll be speaking against the motion. I'm quite happy to leave the prayer where it is. I think it does represent our community, and quite happy to. This here, non-denominational affirmation, once again, there's nothing wrong with it, but I'm quite happy to leave the prayer where it is, so I'll be speaking against the motion. Councillor Lockett as the reserver.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Similar to Councillor Foster, I understand that religion is a very personal thing. Spirituality and faith is a very personal thing, and I really respect everyone's comments thus far, and I also comments in the public. Religion and faith is a very personal thing. However, having said that, the government is secular. If you wish to pray to whatever God it is that you believe in, you go to a church to do that. Government at all levels is secular. Religion is not meant to be included. There's a clear division of religion and the state. There has been for hundreds of years, ever since democracy was developed in Greece back in the day. So,
hang on.
You've had your say, it's my turn now, Councillor Dukas. This is about being inclusive. I have Muslim friends, it's about diversity and being inclusive. If we look at the stats from 2016 at the Australian Bureau of Statistics, no religion, 30% of Moyne Shire have described it as having no religion. Not stated, 10%. In there, a fair few people said Jedi, so some people use the Force. So again, it's a personal choice, and again, I respect everyone's state on this. Am I going to celebrate Christmas in a couple of weeks? Absolutely. I can really respect people's Christianity and their views, and do unto others. Sweet. I agree with a lot of those beliefs. Do I follow it? No, but that's my personal choice. And this is about personal choice, being inclusive. Diversity is what makes Australia and Victoria and a fantastic nation, as you were saying before. Whether it's someone's gender, their sex, their age, their sexual preference, their sexual orientation, their race, their faith, their spirituality, all of that is inclusive, whatever that be. Does a prayer have a place at the start of a council meeting? I don't think so. And, we've been elected to represent a diverse shire. In the words of Sly Stone, everyday people. We're here to represent everyday people. Are some of those Catholic? And yeah, absolutely. But this isn't a church. This is a place of government. So that's my 2 drops worth on it. And thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Lockett. Councillor Foster to summarise as the mover.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I really thank all of my colleagues for being open to discussing this, because it at least gets it out there. The conversation is started. I feel like at least I have done some work today. Since the agenda was published last week, I've been contacted by literally dozens of people, some of whom identify as being Christian, really championing this and saying it is so time, we really need to do this. So it's obviously not going to be today, but perhaps down the track we can see our way to being a far more inclusive and welcoming and tolerant community. But thank you for at least giving us the chance to raise the topic. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Foster. Okay, councillors voting on item 11. All those in favour? Councillors Foster, Councillor Lockett. Those against? Councillor Smith, Mead, Purcell, Gleeson and Dukas. Motion is lost. We have dealt with item 12, so item 13, which is the council notice motion from Councillor Gleeson that Port Fairy East Beach Rockwall request for urgent protection works. Councillor Gleeson.
In light of our recent walk around the town and our inspection of the East Beach, I think it's important that we
So first of all, Councillor Gleeson, we'll just read out the motion, please, and then we'll get a seconder.
The motion that the Council write to the Australian Minister for Environment and the Victorian Minister for Energy, Environment and Climate Change and local member Mr Dan Tehan, urging them to immediately provide consent for urgent protection works at the former tip site and night soil site at East Beach Port Fairy.
Thanks, Councillor East. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Lockett is a seconder. Councillor Gleeson to speak on that motion, thanks.
As I mentioned earlier, our little walk around the other day, it just highlighted the absolute urgency of this work to proceed. It's an indictment on us and probably a reflection of other people's opinions that we can allow Plover to stop this work going ahead when we're facing a significant environmental issue. And should the collapse of the walls at either point, we'll have an environmental disaster, and therefore this work should be immediate. I've got nothing really to say.
Thanks, Councillor Gleeson. Councillor Lockett is a seconder.
I reserve my right. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Other councillors wishing to speak? Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, I'd like to speak in favour of the motion. Look, the money's sitting there. There are some issues with the protection of the plover. I believe that there will be ways of protecting the plover and probably encouraging them to breed in other areas while we do this work on those two particular areas. I commend Councillor Gleeson on putting this motion up and definitely will be supporting it.
Thanks, Councillor Purcell. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm definitely supporting Councillor Gleeson's motion, and I think we just don't want to let it stop there. We want to keep pursuing this because it is a matter of urgency, and we're contacting our local member, and I think we should make sure that we keep in contact with the Honourable Dan Tehan, because he will have the ears of the Minister, and I think I can't help supporting the motion more. So I think it's critical that we get on and try and get the work done before there's a disaster.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Any other councillor? Councillor Dugas?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, thank you. More of a clarification.
Clarification for Councillor Gleeson?
No, clarification probably for the officers and Jackie, I shouldn't say Jackie, news girl.
We might just go to Mr Millen for a start.
Yeah, okay. Last week in the paper, there was a picture of two people who were described as plover protection officers, dressed like SAS officers. So wonder they didn't have a bloody rocket launcher on their shoulders. And their job, apparently, going by the article, was to protect these plovers. So if they've got plover protection officers, why can't we start the work while they protect the plover? I don't know what it's costing us, but to me, when I read it, I had to pick myself up off the floor because I thought, you've got to be kidding. So can we investigate if that's true and correct? But I'm sure these two people on the beach in their dark blue uniforms and their plover protection.
Councillor Dugas, you're referring to representatives from
Delp, I'm assuming. I don't know, there might be a special, SAS is in the news now, they might be SAS plover protectors, who knows?
Mr Miller, in response?
Oh, I'd be happy to make an inquiry through.
Thank you.
Through our colleagues. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks. Anything else? Any other councillors speaking on the motion? I'll speak in support of the motion. It's just almost a farcical situation that the risks of what could happen if the wall is breached versus moving a couple of plovers along is just unbelievable. And unfortunately, a bit like our discussions earlier on wind farms, we're restricted by the state here of what we can and can't do. So once again, we're advocating to the state on trying to get some action here to protect our community. All right. Councillor Lockett as a reserver.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, this may highlight the possibility, and whether it's easier or not, to have a rock wall in the water as a protection device. Might be easy to do, just to flag. But yeah, commend Councillor Gleeson on bringing up the motion. It's an incredibly frustrating situation. Don't get me wrong, I adore the little hooded plovers, they're great, but if we save 2 or 3 hooded plovers, then at the time the East Beach old tip site is breached and leaks into the ocean, if that happens on our watch, you can't fathom how frustrating this is. All of us can. Went to Tim Palace many years ago and said, please help, give us some money. And they have, but it's just sitting there. So it's incredibly frustrating. I think the officers are doing a great job advocating. But yeah, again, commend Councillor Gleeson for bringing it forward. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Locke. Councillor Gleeson to finalise.
I'd just like to finalise by saying, in protecting the plover, the work is limited to an unworkable time frame. To be outside the breeding period of April to June denies us access to the beach, and it's a ridiculous situation. So, I just ask that you support this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Gleeson. Okay, councillors, voting on item 13. All those in favour? Motion is carried 7-0 in support. Item 14, general matters. Do we have any general matters to highlight? Councillor Lockett, general matters.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got a few here. Coming up to Christmas time. Just to highlight, in the last week, the Port Fairy Board Riders Club have been re-established, and also the Port Fairy Soccer Club. So stay tuned. Very, very exciting times for Sport Fairy, I like to call it. Also, Moyne Youth have just knocked it out of the park. Coming up over summer in Port Fairy, Mortlake, Noranda, Koroit and Macarthur, they've got some drive-in cinemas happening. I'm so pumped for this. They've got Ghostbusters and Karate Kid, a couple of 80s classic movies, but just a fantastic initiative that the Moyne Youth Council have brought forward. So that's a really exciting opportunity. They've also got a pop-up recording studio for young Moyne residents, which Nathan Cavalieri is helping them out. So that's pretty exciting. They're learning recording, mastering and mixing and all that kind of stuff on the 8th of January. Fireworks is going ahead in Port Fairy New Year's Eve. If there's ever a social distancing event you can attend, it's fireworks. So great to see that Port still, maybe Portland and Warrnambool can give theirs to Port Fairy. And also the Koroit Truck Show is kind of going ahead, but there's a big convoy happening. Contact Shirl if you're interested on 0429 812 464. I'm sure he doesn't mind me reading that out. It's on the Koroit notice board, so it's okay to be public about it. But they're getting a, what's it called, the COVID convoy to Koroit. They're driving from Melbourne to Koroit with all the trucks. So, yeah, good luck if you're stuck behind it. But that's a pretty big convoy. So there's events still going ahead. Good to see. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right, thanks, Councillor Lockett. Any other general matters items from councillors? Rightio, thank you. We'll move on. Item 15, no urgent business. Item 16, CEO meeting schedule and activities report.
So, Mr Mayor?
Yes?
Under urgent business?
Yes.
Would Councillor Purcell's motion to include those other wind farms, would you like to slip that in under urgent business? It's going to save us 2 months.
I don't believe it fits the criteria of necessary before the next meeting.
In other words, you don't want to do it?
I don't believe it fits the criteria.
Thanks, Councillor Purcell.
I thought you'd try.
Item 16, CEO meeting schedule and activities report. Any questions here for the CEO or other directors on any matter within that report or meeting schedule? Councillor Smith.
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor, to Mr Millard. 4th of December, the meeting with the CEO of the Glenelg Hockland CMA, did the opening of the river mouth at Peterborough come up at all? It's something that's been constantly going on and of great concern to Peterborough.
Mr Millard.
Through you, Mayor, no, Councillor Smith, because that part of the municipality is actually under the watch of the Crangamite CMA, not the Glenelg Hopkins one, but a number of other river openings and riverine sort of environments were discussed as part of that. The key discussions were CMA is very important in the upcoming amendment on Amendment C69 for Port Fairy Structure Plan. So obviously the CEOs of both organisations should spend a bit of time together on that.
Yes, thank you.
Mr Millard, I asked a question on the 30th of November meeting with Colleen White, who's the Regional Director of Barwon South West Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, or the Regional Boss of DELP, which has certainly come up several times this afternoon in our discussions with hurdles, etc. How did that meeting go? What was discussed there? Thanks.
Many things, Mayor. I think including, off the top of my head, some of the challenges we were having at the time in relation to Macarthur Cemetery and support from DELP trying to identify a location for their building. Other cemetery matters that we've written to the Minister on. Also, obviously, the rock wall at Port Fairy, a range of DELP matters that it's not unusual for directors, particularly economic development planning and also infrastructure, to meet pretty regularly with regional directors on matters of interest.
Thanks. Any other questions? Councillor Dugas.
Thank you. To you and the CEO, Salt Creek Wind Farm. You received a letter on the 18th and 28th of September from David Allen's lawyer. Can you tell me, did you you haven't told us about it, but did you ever respond to that letter, and where are we with Salt Creek? Has anybody ever done anything about their issues?
Mr. Miller.
Through you, Mayor, I might defer to Mr. Davis on that one.
Through you, Mayor, we actually responded yesterday to that letter and got a response from Mr. Allen's lawyer on that course of action. So yes, there has been a response that responded to all the outstanding queries.
Right, so you've caught up, let's say, because there's been a few emails toing and froing from September onwards.
Yep, Mr. Miller.
And nothing much has happened.
Mr. Miller.
In fact, Mayor, there's been a lot of emails toing and throwing, and I guess emails of that nature, I do like to take some advice before I respond to those, particularly on the ones where legal implications result. So I will take time in responding to some of those, but that one has been responded to.
Thank you.
So
any further questions? Yes,
in answer to requests for information and reports, that shouldn't take forever. I mean, that should only take a couple of days.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Through you, Mayor, which reports, Councillor Dukas?
Well, whichever ones that Dominica Tannock asked for in the email.
Okay, Mayor, I've already responded that. We've responded to.
Okay, no, fair enough.
Any further questions?
Are we going to be kept abreast of what goes on with that issue, because it's in the hands of Mr. Allen's lawyers? It's nice to know what goes on instead of being kept in the dark.
Mr. Davis.
Through you, Mayor, happy to take direction on that. As I said, we responded to all the issues yesterday and we received response from Mr. Allen's lawyer along those lines, accepting that course of action for now.
Thanks. Yes, Mr. Miller.
Just in relation to the report, could I just comment on a couple of matters?
Yeah, go for it. Yep.
Given it's the last meeting for the year that's been 2020, I actually wanted to acknowledge, both the work of the previous council and the fact we've commenced a new council, and the work that, the staff that we employ on behalf of council and the ratepayers, the work that they've achieved throughout this year. Despite all those challenges, adapting services on the run, there's a nice photo in there on page 4 of 62, which shows Port Fairy Golf Club with the water over the fence. Despite throwing a flood, all the other matters, business has continued, sometimes in a different format, but business has continued. So I really wanted to thank the staff on behalf of myself and my fellow colleagues, and recognise the great efforts that they've made throughout the year.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Miller. I'll endorse those comments as well. It's been a terrific effort for the team to carry on through some challenging situations and to see us come through pretty much almost the other side now has been a great effort by everyone. So pass on our thanks to them. Thank you.
Happy to take any other questions while.
Yes, Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On a similar note, I'd just like to thank the Port Fairy Daycare Centre for their how they adapted to the COVID situation was absolutely phenomenal. To go in there wearing masks and not wearing masks, hang on, no one's here, kids are here. Every time I take the kids in there, they are so happy to greet you and see you, and the work they do is absolutely phenomenal. I'd like to congratulate them. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Lockett. Any other questions for Mr Millard? Yes, Councillor Dugas.
Probably to Miss Granger, to do with Mortlake South Wind Farm. When we discussed the after-hours work, was the company meant to write to neighbours within a 2K residence to get their opinion on whether they agree or disagree?
Thank you, Councillor Dukas. Yes, we had asked the company to provide written evidence that they've got consent from neighbours within 2 kilometres.
Before they start?
Whether it was in batches or whether it was the whole
Yeah,
lot.
I thought it was in batches, but wasn't that meant to happen before they started work?
That's correct.
So I know neighbours that have received no letters and work's already started, so they've started before the letters have even gone out, let alone some not even getting letters.
So we received one complaint regarding them having done some work last week. I've followed that up and have asked for a response within 7 days as to what occurred and why did it occur and did they have consent, but just hadn't forwarded it to us.
So if they don't stop at 10 o'clock and they continue to 12, which wouldn't be hard to prove, what are we going to do about it?
We'll investigate the matter, Councillor Dukas.
Right, so there's no penalty. We investigate but nothing happens, so...
The approval we gave them for extended hours said that if there was substantial non-compliance, then we could withdraw our approval.
Okay,
Right,
any other
okay.
questions, Councillor Dugas?
Yeah, when do we start getting rates out of Dundonald? Because they're doing commissioning with 1 or 2 turbines at a time, and then there's another commissioning type thing where they do them all at once at a reduced rate and then they wind up to their maximum. While they're generating, shouldn't we be calculating the rates on that generation?
The rates agreement we've entered into them will require them to start paying rates as of 1st of December this year.
1st of December,
Yes.
irrespective of what they produce?
That's correct.
Or they can only pay rates on what they do produce, though?
And the flat rate that is
And
also.
the flat rate, okay, thank you. First, oh, well, they're paying, it's a start.
I might just chime in with one. Mr Millard, you're now on the board of the Great South Coast Food and Fibre. How can you give us a report back from there, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mayor. Had my first meeting as a board member in the last couple of weeks, so that went particularly well. It was obviously early days, but really confident in the appointment they've made as executive officer. They've already reviewed their, the plans that they have in the coming year, and they are well aware of the fact that we are hoping to see significant advances for our contribution to food and fibre. I'm really confident that they'll achieve that. It may, once Ms Collard settles into that role, it would be actually nice to have her along perhaps to a council meeting, and I know she's already advocating on behalf of some of the matters that we're concerned with as well, so I'm happy to try and arrange that in the new year.
Thanks, Mr Millard. Any final questions? Okay, thanks very much. That concludes the open meeting. We'll now move into a confidential item.